is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pearce.
And me, Miriam Cates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
I think GB News is completely unique in the way that we interact with our viewers.
Our audience aren't afraid to have their say. They want their voices heard now, and they've got a channel where that can happen.
I find more and more as I'm wandering around, people come up to me and they say, we saw you on television. I say, oh yes, on what? On GB News. Hello, are you the famous Sue?
The whole crew hid me here now. We came to celebrate.
It's our job to be the eyes and ears of the viewers.
They are part of the GB News family, and I'm pleased to say it's a very large family.
And if people go to the time and trouble of listening and watching, then we've got to do a good job for them.
Well, I'm here, right in the epicentre of the protest.
Here we go again.
If you just tuned in, where have you been?
It is raucous here tonight.
That's what makes us the fearless champion of Britain.
Very good evening, good morning, live from Washington, D.C. This is Bev Turner on GB News with the stories shaping Great Britain and the United States of America tonight.
Start with the hottest news story that's going on right now. It's stunning and it's awful and it's disgusting. It's out of Northern Ireland.
Yep, it's a crisis in Northern Ireland that continues to escalate, but it has captured the imagination of the most influential American commentators here stateside. Just what is the perception people have here in America of what is happening in the UK? We'll dig into that also tonight.
We'll see what happens, but we hit them hard yesterday, and we're going to hit them again hard today in case you miss it, in case you don't turn on your television set.
It's happening right now. Reports are saying that the US military has launched strikes on Iran after President Trump said earlier that forces would hit the country hard following an exchange of fire earlier this week. Also, Cup is happening this weekend, and Somali referee Omar Artan has been refused entry to America over what the White House says are links to suspected terror group members. Is this an immigration policy too far, or does the US have important lessons for people in control of Britain's borders?
We used to have an unwritten social contract that each generation would do better than the last. That contract's being broken, and these young people, 1 million young people not in education, employment and training and rising, they're on the front line of that broken contract.
That's right. Britain, of course, has 1 million young people aged 16 to 24 who are not in education, employment or training. But according to a new survey, the proportion of university students who believe they are getting more bang for their buck from university has reached the highest point in more than a decade. Can it possibly be true? We're going to be asking if university is really worth the time and money these days. Also,
graceful, but I think it's really hard to manage as well. I really hard to police and control.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure what else I could do about it, but I know it is rife and that we're being overly cautious with our phones while we're here, yeah.
Met Commissioner Samart Rowley is pushing the Home Secretary to force phone companies to make stolen devices harder to reuse as he seeks to wage a war on phone theft in Britain's capital. I'm going to be talking to a former Scotland Yard detective to ask whether it will do anything. Is it all too little, too late? I'm Bev Turner. This is The Late Show Live. Very very warm welcome to you, whether you're watching us in America, in the UK or wherever else in the world. You get us on the app and on YouTube, of course. Joining me this evening in Washington, my panel political commentator Hilary Fordwich is here, and Democratic strategist Richard Goodstein. And in London, journalist and broadcaster Claire Muldoon and Benjamin Butterworth. Thank you all for joining us this evening. Right, let me know what you think as well at home. GBNews.com/your say. Let's go to our main news tonight. The unrest in Belfast continues as overnight hundreds of masked protesters burned buildings, set vehicles on fire and shouted anti-immigration slogans. The victim, we now know his name is Stephen Ogilvie, has lost an eye and has suffered other serious injuries to his head and neck. The suspect, a 30-year-old Sudanese man who was granted asylum in 2023, remains in custody. Well, today, Prime Minister's questions happened, of course, and Sir Keir Starmer and Kemi Badenoch reacted to the growing disorder.
We are united in calling for calm and determined to restore order, support the police and all those on the front line, and ensure that justice is done.
No one has a right to burn families out of their homes or to burn public property and attack the police.
But it has been striking here in America that the chaos in Northern Ireland has renewed focus on all matters relating to the UK, with the White House and influential political commentators stateside discussing all matters Northern Ireland, immigration and crime at the moment. Just what is the perception of the American media class in regards to the UK? We're going to be digging into that with my panel in just a minute. Let's get the very latest, though, from GB News Northern Ireland reporter Doogie Beattie. Doogie, very good evening to you. Good morning to you there over in Northern Ireland. What is the very latest, Doogie, tonight? How much trouble, disruption is there on the streets of Belfast?
Well, tonight the trouble here was more or less centralised in a town called Glengormley. It is on the main M2 motorway that brings you to the north to places like Portrush, Coleraine. So it's quite a busy place. But the main roundabout off it, just about half a mile from it, is a hotel that houses migrants. And every Sunday for the last year there has been a protest there. People from here, all middle class, going up and protesting about these single men who are brought into Northern Ireland. Most of them are coming through the Republic of Ireland, obviously an EU border. But this evening, just about 7 o'clock, quite a crowd, about 800 people, made their way from Northcott Shopping Centre, where they all assembled, came up against the police and decided to march around them. They got as far as the other side of the roundabout here, which runs under the motorway, and there the police had a huge blockade across the road. Anger flared, tempers went, and there was a considerable fire in Department of Environment yard, which holds all the lorries for repairing the roads, etc. Gas cylinders exploding. The police then decided to move in, and when they moved in, they took them from the roundabout, which is just sitting straight in front of me, and pushed them down this main road. You can still see bricks and so forth lying in the road here at the moment. You can see the police Land Rovers sitting in the distance. But in order to quell it, they actually had to bring in water cannon, and it was quite hot and heavy for a while. It's not the worst rioting I've ever seen, but it was there, and it really was quite vicious for a while or two. Many arrests. But of course, we've seen exactly the same thing 13 months ago in Northern Ireland over an incident that happened in Ballymena, a sexual assault on a young girl, and we had 5 nights of rioting, and it's all over immigration. And really on Monday night, when Stephen Ogilvie was so badly assaulted, and that video, it was actually a video of the whole, what went on, every single thing, and that really sent communities here over the edge. And ironically enough, the Protestant and Catholic communities that fought each other for 3 decades have came together on this in those socially deprived areas where these immigrants are being put, and they have came out on the streets together to oppose so much of this immigration. it's actually strange because in Britain at the moment they're talking about doing away with the immigrant hotels. We don't have many of them here. They are actually housed in the social areas, and they now want the border in Northern Ireland looked at between the Republic of Ireland, and people are saying it was part of the Good Friday Agreement, etc., that wouldn't happen. That's nonsense. I read the Good Friday Agreement, I voted on it, and that is simply not true. Britain really now needs to ask Europe to monitor who is coming in and out, because it's a backdoor to the UK.
Doogie, I've got a question for you. I'm interested to know who these rioters are. How would you describe who they are? Is it the disillusioned, angry young men? Is it these NEETs who aren't working? They've just taken this as an excuse to go and set some wheelie bins alight and cause a problem. Are they the far right, as Starmer says?
No, they're not the far right. Unfortunately, what they are is young white males who really have been left behind by society. Northern Ireland used to be a huge manufacturing base, shipyards, aircraft factories, tyre manufacturers, etc. And of course, when all that was taken out of here, those young men were left that if they weren't educated in such a way that they would end up basically on the road to nowhere, basically on benefits for the rest of their lives. And when they get into their late teens and early 20s, they start looking around them and they are disillusioned. They are very, very disillusioned. And then add to that the social housing that they need so much if they want to get married, start a family, they're not getting it because it's being bought up by groups for immigrants that are coming in to those very areas, because it's cheap housing, because a lot of people don't want to live there. And these young men are disillusioned. They are very angry with life. Some of them are not in that category. Some of them are middle class young men that are coming into this, but at the moment there is no paramilitary involvement in this. This is really young men, angry young men, and they're wanting to kick back, and they're saying no political party represents us. It's not what we want. If there's jobs to be had, we want those jobs for us. But of course, because immigrants they're trying to settle them in these areas, any jobs, etc., that's going, employers are being encouraged to make sure that they take immigrants over the head of the native population. That's right throughout Ireland, Bev, north and south, and pretty much exactly the same in areas like Manchester, Glasgow. But unfortunately in Northern Ireland, they are very used to that, and they were brought up with it. And unfortunately, they will take to the streets very, very quickly.
Yeah, OK, Doogie, thank you. I know you've had a few very long days, so we really appreciate you joining us on the Late Show Live this evening. Thank you so much, Doogie Beattie there. In Northern Ireland, let's talk to Labour MP Barry Gardiner about this now. Barry, thank you as well for joining us this evening. Now, I think that last point that Doogie makes about these young, angry young men who don't know what they're doing with their lives it underpins so much of what we're talking about here. I know it's about migration. I know it's about bringing in people from cultures that are not like us. I know it's about bringing traumatised people into the UK who can become more violent. But just talk to me a little bit about what Labour can do about those young men who are taken to the streets because they feel that life has let them down in some way.
Well, look, of course they feel let down. They've had 14 years of austerity, and they are, Dougie was right, the manufacturing industry that they used to depend on has gone, and we need to recreate that, and that's why we're doing all the things in terms of apprenticeships, all the things in terms of addressing the skills base for those young people. But look, we have to say, you know, a Sudanese man tries to kill a UK citizen. So what do other UK citizens do? They commit arson. They attack not just black families, not just Ukrainian families, not just Asian families who are actually propping up their health service, but they burn down the house of another young UK citizen, Jamie Corrie, who says he'll never get over it? Do they listen to the family of Stephen Ogilvy, who said, look, false information is being put out here, false information about the condition of Stephen. They are disgusted.
I mean, he's not okay, Barry. Let's be honest. Stephen Ogilvy is not all right. There's no false information. That man is in a very bad way.
But Bev, listen to what his family are saying. That he has suffered the most appalling attack, but they are saying they're disgusted by the violence. They said that this shouldn't be happening. And we have Tommy Robinson in Russia now with Elon Musk's father stoking violence in the UK, and he calls himself a patriot. Patriot?
But the whole point is, and that's why I wanted to ask Doogie that question about the people who are rioting, because nobody else is asking that question. None of the MPs are stepping back and saying, what is wrong with these British kids that they want to go out to the streets? What is it that has happened? What conditions have been created? And I agree with you largely about what happened under the Conservative government. I completely agree with you on that. But what you were seeing at the moment under Labour is not even a willingness to take that on as a topic. We're seeing Starmer blaming these kids for this violence, and he's right to do so. They have an element of personal responsibility in this. But there's not enough people talking about how have we got here.
Yeah, look, I disagree, actually. I constantly talk about how we got here. I constantly talk about the need to give these young men, and it's not just men, but predominantly men, young men, a sense of ownership in their society. I've criticized the way in which these people, they feel they do everything right. They've done what we've told them to do. They've got their exams at school. Northern Ireland is one of the best education systems in the world. I was Minister for Education in Northern Ireland, so I know just how good their education system is. They do their exams, they do very well, they go on to university, they come out of university, they've got 60,000 quid's worth of debt hanging around their heads. Is it a wonder that they find it difficult then to start a family? Is it wonder they find a difficulty then in actually getting a mortgage? Of course they feel frustrated, and that's why we have to address that. And we've got to address the issue of low pay.
Then they see, Barry, but then they see migrants like the perpetrator of this crime come into their country, be given a house, be given a handout, and that's the pinch point. That is the bit at which the powder keg goes off, because they can cope with having no opportunities. But it's when they see people coming from other countries, when they're apparently being given opportunity, that is where the resentment comes from. And it would just be so nice to hear the Prime Minister recognise that in some way. Barry, I really appreciate your contribution. We've got to move on. It's just a short hit tonight, but thank you so much. Barry Gardner, their Labour MP. Let's talk to my panel about this. Hilary, I could see you nodding there beside me.
Yes, I can actually extrapolate the anger of those young men, because anytime I go to the UK, you know, I've got to pay for everything when I get there. I actually feel like saying, when I get to the border control, which there aren't anymore, it's all machines, excuse me, where is my free 4-star hotel? Why should I pay for a hotel? I'm born British, and these people come here and they get it all for nothing. That's a tiny fraction. I'm not living their lives. I'm not seeing this happen literally, and we've seen now in Belfast, neighbours, they're going from house to house because they know which people have been given free houses. Absolutely. It's the injustice, it's the lack of fairness.
And they shouldn't, of course, they shouldn't be burning down the houses of people who've been given them for free. No. But I do think it makes their anger understandable. Is it directed in the right place, Richard?
I mean, it's not unique, of course, to the UK. I mean, books have been written about this generation of young men in the US who use drugs. That's why there's a fentanyl crisis. They're either under or unemployed, and they're playing video games in their parents' basement. Yeah. So I think this is a problem that, again, this is putting aside the immigration issue. There is this generation that has lost the opportunity for through manufacturing and so forth, that's moved to Mexico, China, Southeast Asia, you name it.
Yeah. Let me talk to Claire and Benjamin in London on this. We started the segment, guys, by saying what a big story this is here in America. It really has captured the imagination of the biggest networks in the world here, Benjamin. Why do you think that is? What is it about this particular situation? Coming off the back of Henry Novak, of course, as well, which means that it's making headlines around the world.
For hours. But I do have an element of frustration that yet again there's been a horrific atrocity, and yet immediately all the attention turns to the dangerous idiots that go and riot afterwards. They are dangerous, they are racist, they should face the full weight of the law. But I can't help but think I wish we were still talking about the actual incident that happened that is so concerning. I suppose, there's no doubt that in the changing world that we live in, and with migration becoming far easier and accessible, there are people in many countries that feel concerned about migrants coming in who can be dangerous, and clearly this is an example of that for the alleged attack. And so I think that strikes a chord in the US as the UK.
But also, I would say to that, Claire, Benjamin's point about the fact that we've started talking about the rioters. But that's because, I would argue, Starmer and our leaders didn't come out straight away and talk about the problem, talk about the issue, the fear that underpins the violence we're seeing in Belfast now.
To a certain extent, that's true, but as Dougie said in his report, 13 months ago, and I know this for a fact, I do have skin in the game. 2 of my daughters went to Queen's University Belfast. 1 still lives in Belfast and has witnessed things like this before. 13 months ago, up in Ballymena, there was similar riots. And tonight, off that M2 at Coleraine and Portrush, we see more evidence of rioters or potential defects to the country, like what we saw here last night. Now, Starmer, in my view, is a very weak leader in any event, and what he should have done was actually came out and said, look, I understand completely your frustration. I understand the way that you are feeling. Let's try and get through to Europe, immigration, controls, vetting systems, and let's try and sort this out once and for all. We know this Sudanese man left from Paris, arrived in Dublin, and as Dougie quite rightly pointed out, and this is a known fact, they're using the soft approach, i.e. buses, to go through the used to be a hard border between South and Northern Ireland. Now it's not, thank God, because of the Good Friday Agreement, and that was set up on both sides of the sectarian divide as part of the agreement to form peace, a peaceful Belfast, a peaceful Northern Ireland, a peaceful Southern Ireland, because no one's going to get what they want on either side of that border until we can, move generations and generations. But this incident, this terrible, tragic incident that was filmed, and I was pleased to see surrounding neighbours of Stephen, the victim, coming out Ogilvy with the hockey stick, lacrosse stick, and actually help. It was nice to see that some form of social cohesion that we know is there. But, setting buses on fire that people need for infrastructure, people need to get to work. What is the point in that absolutely disgusting behaviour? None.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Stuart, on your say, has said you can't afford your own home. The minimum wage is the maximum wage. Social housing is reserved for indolent foreigners. The government hates you. The migrants that replace you hate you. And politicians wonder why the young are angry. Keep your messages coming, gbnews.com /your say. Still to come this evening on The Late Show Live.
And you better do something about immigration, and you better do something about energy, or you won't have a Europe.
As President Trump signs the Secure America Act, a $70 billion measure that provides funding for U.S. immigration and customs enforcement, those ICE guys, were his warnings about Europe and open borders very prophetic. This is The Late Show Live, only on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference It's fun.
Oh no, you didn't say that, though. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
isn't it?
no,
Because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes and Co weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
From court mornings,
to warm family brunches,
from football to tennis, in the car,
in the kitchen.
GB News Breakfast is there with the stories you need and the conversations that matter.
Anyway, let's talk business.
Well, it has been a historic night in British politics.
It's astonishing, isn't it?
We're here again.
To start your day just right. GB News Breakfast.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Some people enjoy lazy Sunday mornings, but not me.
What's the truth of the matter? So that's a very live question. Would you support him if he waters down these plans?
Before the spin sets in, I'll be getting to the truth.
This is personal.
No soft questions, no easy answers.
It's one thing if the state has rules in this country. It's another thing whether the police and others actually police them.
Setting the agenda and holding those in power to account.
You can't really blame her if the system is set up this way.
You will not want to miss it, trust me. The Camilla Tominey Show, Sundays from 9:30, only on GB News.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to The Late Show, live with me, Bev Turner. So as the unrest continues in Belfast, attention here is also on immigration policy. Attention in the UK is on the immigration policy here in the United States. President Donald Trump has signed a Secure America Act. It's a $70 billion measure that provides funding for US immigration and customs enforcement, also known as ICE, and Border Patrol through 2029. Here he was earlier today.
But the Secure America Act provides $38 billion to ICE, $26 billion to Border Patrol to ensure these critical law enforcement agencies have the necessary resources to do their jobs, protecting our borders and getting criminal aliens out of the country. So is it time for the UK to take a note out of Donald Trump's playbook when it comes to immigration? Let's talk now to political commentator Stephen Kent, friend of the show, of course. Stephen, thank you so much for joining us on The Late Show. So this is one of these areas that we have discussed several times on this show. Immigration, crime, and how we fix the issue. What is America doing? What is President Trump doing to have fixed this problem so fantastically?
Well, the first thing that he has done is actually close the U.S. border and enforce border crossings and not allow people to come into the country, claim asylum, hop into a hotel completely funded by the taxpayers, and then disappear into the interior of the country. That problem has really been taken off the table when it comes to the U.S. immigration debate, leaving us with the really thorny issue of deportations. But he has elevated to the center of American politics since the moment he came down the escalator in 2015, the idea that societies are founded on trust and shared values. Countries rely on social cohesion of a certain kind, of a certain extent, and a belief that there is common cause amongst the citizenry, and that the people want generally the same things. If you don't have that, politics starts to fall apart. In Ireland, where this is, completely breaking into total madness and violence. I mean, this is a country that was on the brink for several decades and is still just barely, tacitly in a moment of peace when it comes to, their place in the UK. So immigration is an issue that has to be addressed because the people want it to be addressed.
And I've been so interested, and I'm sure you are as well, because you have one eye on the British media and you are an integral part of the American media, how this has captured the imagination of the news agenda here in America. What is it about what's happening in Belfast this week, and also the case of Henry Novak last week? What is it about these cases which is tapping into a sort of fear that America has?
Well, we've watched Ireland for a long time here in the United States. I grew up in the 1990s, and we were very interested in stories about the Troubles leading up to the Good Friday Agreement of 1998, and that has brought a certain amount of stability to Irish politics, but you still have a situation where the north of Ireland, does view itself as a distinct culture from the Republic of Ireland and, of course, from the Brits. And there is a fear in that country that people are able to enter the UK through the English Channel, coming from France, and then they just come on into Ireland, and then they move on up to Belfast, and nobody there had any sort of political capital to vote for such a thing or express themselves through the political process. And then all of a sudden you have Somalis trying to cut people's heads off in the middle of the street, or I might be getting the country wrong, but this is something that people don't feel like they voted for, and we should be able to actually change immigration policy based on the will of the people.
And of course, as you said, this is the ticket on which President Trump ran. He promised the American people that he would sort out the southern border. He's done it so convincingly, categorically, in a way that we in the UK watch with disbelief. But is there an anxiety here in America that should there be a change of government in a couple of years, that border could start being open again? I've seen some commentators online talking about Mamdani in New York and his vision of a borderless world, and that seems to frighten some Americans.
Well, it should frighten Americans. Democrats have not learned their lesson. The reason that they have been holding up all of this this funding for the basic functions of ICE, deportation, and immigration enforcement is because they still do not believe sincerely as a party that immigration enforcement is a worthwhile cause. Even though the American people raised this to be the most salient issue of 2024, it stayed atop Gallup polling in this country leading up to that election for 3 months, which was unprecedented in polling history, that Americans stayed focused on a single issue for, over 90 days at a time. So that issue has been largely addressed. The flow of people coming into the country unaccounted for has stopped. But of course, we cannot figure out as a country how to deal with the issue of enforcement. If Democrats and NGOs funded by George Soros cause enough chaos in one city by funding protests, riots, and political operatives to stir trouble, then the American people back away from that. They go, oh, well, I didn't want things to get messy. Oh, I didn't want things to get rough. I don't want people to be hurt, but I just want my country back. Well, all Democrats have to do is foment enough chaos for Americans to sour on the idea of immigration enforcement. And you're going to see that, of course, all across the Western world.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Stephen. Stephen Kent, political commentator. Hopefully have you back in the studio soon as well. Right, Hillary, listening to that, it is one of those issues with President Trump and what he's done with immigration here that we have to learn lessons from what America has done. Can we ever do it, though?
Well, I think it's always possible. I mean, look how Margaret Thatcher reversed all the decline from what was happening from the Labour government previously. Now, obviously, it wasn't with regard to immigration, but she did reverse economic decline. The fear that I have actually for the UK is this is generations and generations now, and it's not a question of racism at all. It's a question of lack of assimilation and cultural differences and norms. Now, I don't know the background of the Sudanese man that was arrested. I don't know whether he had been brought up here, but certainly Bikram had. He was born in the UK. So is it lack of assimilation? That's another issue. That's a complete different issue than we're faced with in the US, where President Trump put a stop to those crossing the border coming now. What will happen generations from now?
Well, Hadi Aladid is his name, the guy that is accused of this crime. That we have to still say that it's a live case. It hasn't been found guilty yet. Obviously, we know what we've seen with our own eyes, but we do have to say that he is entitled to a fair trial. But he's 30 and came over to the UK in 2023 via Paris as an asylum seeker.
He wasn't born here, but Bikram was.
Bikram? Which case was that?
That was with the Henry Nowak case.
Oh yes, sorry, the Sikh. Yes.
He was born in the UK.
Yes.
So that's what I'm saying. It's not a question.
As was Axel Rudikabana actually with the Taylor Swift.
That's exactly
girls.
right. So it's a question of lack of assimilation. That is the major issue. So how can you reverse generations? And you can't deport generations of people that have come here and also are British.
Yeah. It's such a thorny topic, that, Richard, and it's one that hasn't been had that conversation about assimilation and cultural difference and whether some cultures are frankly safer than others.
It's hard to disagree with what Hillary's assessing. I would say if Keir Starmer wants to hold on to his office, he should do the opposite of what Joe Biden did on immigration and crime. I think Biden would have been undone by inflation, which was worldwide. But the fact of the matter is, Biden totally blew it on immigration. It was shameful. It was, when it was happening, it appeared it was going to be self-destructive, and it was politically. The odd thing is, Trump came into office with immigration being one of his better issues. He was above water. He was more popular than unpopular. Now, that's not the case. And whether it's Stephen's assessment about George Soros, or whether I would say the people didn't like masked goons in the streets with unmarked cars rounding up people for no good reason, often other than the color of their skin. Forget the shootings. I think that's what's kind of lost Trump and lost the public as far as associating with Republicans on the immigration issue. I think that can be turned around, and I think they're trying to do that by kind of lessening the harshness of the immigration enforcement.
Okay. Right, let's move on to some of the other main news stories here in America tonight. It was quite a day here in Washington, D.C. Bill Gates told a congressional committee that he had never had a personal relationship with the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. He said that he cut ties with Epstein when he could not deliver on fundraising for the tech billionaire's philanthropic efforts. Gates appeared voluntarily in Washington at a closed-door hearing with the House Oversight Committee looking into Epstein, and also reportedly named other powerful people that Jeffrey Epstein approached for fundraising. Also, in unwelcome news for the president, inflation in the US increased at the fastest pace in 3 years. Surging oil prices amid the fragile ceasefire with Iran have weighed heavily on global energy markets. Energy prices rose by 3.9% in May, following a 3.8% increase in April. Americans are feeling the pressure at the pumps, with many speculating that it could have a bad effect on the party's midterm results. In what is a staggering rise, petrol prices are more than 40% higher than this time last year. And finally, a teenager in Texas has been sentenced to 35 years after a stabbing at a high school athletics event. The trial of Carmelo Anthony has polarized America. The death of Austin Metcalf in April 2025 drew national attention, sparking a debate about school safety and self-defense. Both were 17 at the time. Still to come this evening on The Late Show Live. These are some of the images that we've seen this evening from Belfast. We're going to look at the chaos in Northern Ireland and ask some hard questions about law and order and Britain's borders. Don't go anywhere. This is The Late Show Live, only on GB News.
Some people enjoy lazy Sunday mornings, but not me.
What's the truth of the matter? So that's a very live question. Would you support him if he waters down these plans?
Before the spin sets in, I'll be getting to the truth.
This is personal.
No soft questions, no easy answers.
It's one thing if the state has rules in this country. It's another thing whether the police and others actually police them.
Setting the agenda and holding those in power to account.
You can't really blame her if the system is set up this way.
You will not want to miss it, trust me. The Camilla Tominey Show, Sundays from 9:30, only on GB News.
Breaking news, live updates, stories that matter.
From the heart of the GB newsroom to every corner of Britain, with our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
GB News bulletins are there to deliver the latest news that matters to you.
Bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
Because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes and Kerr weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, this Trump made a good start. No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I've been in Westminster for a long time, but I know that though power may be here, its effect on people's lives is across the whole of the country. We may be where rules are made, but it's where they're implemented that matters. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for forthright and frank discussion on where Britain has come from, where it's going, and where it will end up. That's State of the Nation, Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Vox Populi, Vox Dei.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to The Late Show Live with Bev Turner. So staying with events in Belfast now, water cannons have been fired at protesters in Northern Ireland as the disorder flared for a second night after Monday's knife attack. Police deployed the vehicle in Newton Abbey, just north of Belfast, and shot plastic bullets towards crowds after dozens of men wearing masks attacked officers with bricks and rocks. Hundreds more officers have been deployed, with businesses and public transport closing early. Let's talk now to journalist and commentator David Shipley. David, you have been writing about this situation in The Spectator. Just give us a broad analysis from your point of view as to what we're witnessing here in Belfast.
I think what we're witnessing here is a predictable response, given the refusal of the British state generally and the Northern Ireland Executive in particular to actually confront the issues which people are bothered by. You saw it yesterday when the Northern Ireland Executive gave this press conference, and they made it very clear: concerns about mass migration are just not up for discussion. They don't consider them a legitimate concern at all. So if people can't seek redress through the ballot box and these kinds of horrific crimes are happening on their streets, I'm not surprised they're turning to this kind of violence.
Just on that press conference yesterday, because I also watched it kind of with my mouth open. I was just aghast that they are so disconnected from most British people and how they feel about this issue. What is the sort of the echo chamber, David? What are the circumstances under which those people exist that they are so detached from most people?
I think what we're seeing is that the British state is fundamentally very weak at the moment. It knows it's failing. You know, it has been doing this experiment with mass migration for 30 years, maybe more, and it hasn't worked. And it's causing great harm economically, it's causing crime, it's causing disorder, it's fracturing society. But they can't admit that, because if they admit that it's not working, they have to admit that everything they've ever believed in is wrong. And they've got it completely wrong. So that they just don't feel able to do that. So all they can do is keep doubling down, you know, insisting that we mustn't have divisiveness, or they try to distract us and say it's knife crime or it's violence. You know, they refuse to do anything other than actually engage with the fact that these crimes committed by migrants happen because of migration policy, because these violent men would not be here were it not for our migration policy that allows them to come here.
And of course, we've just seen at the end of today, not a surprise at all, a crackdown on social media content in times of crisis. Now, who didn't see that coming over the horizon, David? That is, I mean, I almost want to go there and say this is something that they are quite happy to have actually been able to enact. The event of the problem of the situation in Northern Ireland has given them this great excuse to do something that they wanted to do anyway, which is to just clamp down on free speech and discussion. Do you see it in those terms?
I do, yeah. I think what they're actually terrified of is people sharing videos of terrible things happening. Yeah. So they've been having a real push saying we mustn't share this video of the attack in Belfast. You know, it will traumatise the family. It's a scary video. It will traumatise you. Don't share it. Don't share it. And the reason they don't want this stuff shared is because it is inherently radicalising. The thing about living in the United Kingdom in 2026 is that reality is radicalising. And that is why they want to shut down these sorts of videos. And no doubt the next time something this happens, they will say, oh no, we have to stop that video from being shared, block that video, you mustn't see it. Because they know that that will make people angry.
Yeah. And of course, Henry Novak, very visible, very distressing footage. This very visible, very distressing footage. And it creates this perfect storm in which the British public, some of those idiots in Belfast, because they are idiots, you don't set cars alight if you have something better to do. I'm not saying I'm not undermining their sentiment, their anger and their frustration, but the way they're executing it is ridiculous and it's going to achieve nothing. And then off the back of that, you have a government with very authoritarian instincts who want to genuinely make significant changes. If they introduce new laws, which is what they're trying to do, to empower Ofcom to be able to take down material from social media, that in a time of crisis, the parameters of that, David, are so broad that it terrifies me in terms of a vision of what the UK would look like. Does it you?
I think it should do, yeah. I mean, the UK has become a very authoritarian society because they have no other way of trying to control things. It's running out of control. You know, we have violent, awful migrant crime after violent, awful migrant crime. And all they've got is trying to shut things down, stop people talking about it, control, control, control. And yeah, it's been a long time, I think, since the United Kingdom was a free society, and it should frighten us all. And actually, you know, I very much understand why those people in Belfast are rioting and setting fire to things, because actually, if you can't get a solution at the ballot box, if you can't get a solution in the courts, if you're told that your very normal political concerns are just not acceptable, they can't even be voiced, what do you have left? I think fundamentally this violence is the fault of the state, which isn't listening to people.
Yeah, absolutely. Angry people often want to be heard. Thank you so much. What a pleasure. David Shipley there, a journalist and commentator at The Spectator. Join us again, David. That was great. Thanks. Right, still to come this evening on The Late Show Live. We're going to have your front pages, including this from the Daily Telegraph. Smugglers guarantee UK entry via Ireland. We are absolutely ridiculous, aren't we? We're not a serious country anymore. That's how it feels. This is The Late Show Live, only on GB News.
Breaking news, live updates, stories that matter.
From the heart of the GB newsroom to every corner of Britain, with our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
GB News bulletins are there to deliver the latest news that matters to you.
Bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From court mornings
to warm family brunches.
From football to tennis in the car.
In the kitchen.
GB News Breakfast is there. With the stories you need and the conversations that matter.
Anyway, let's talk business.
Well, it has been a historic night in British politics.
It's astonishing, isn't it?
We're here again. To start your day just right. GB News Breakfast.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters. Real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact is Trump made a good start. No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's political podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's political podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes and Kerr weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Let's have a quick look at the main stories on the front page of tomorrow's newspaper, starting with The Telegraph, which is reporting people smuggling gangs are offering illegal migrants guaranteed passage to the UK via flights to Dublin. Let me go to Claire Muldoon and Benjamin Butterworth in the UK on this. This is one of these stories, Claire, where you go, well, of course they are. Yeah. And yet we sort of were caught napping on it, and this case has brought it into sharp focus.
Well, at least thankfully something has brought it into sharp focus. Unfortunately, it was at the hands of such treacherous physical abuse against Stephen Ogilvie, and I think it's just so wrong that this has been allowed because of the free passage from the buses straight from Dublin straight up to Northern Ireland. But more than that though, Bev, why in 2023 was that indefinite leave of remain given? Why is our vetting system so laxed? Why is our system for dealing with refugees or asylum seekers in our country? Why are there no checks and balances? Why do we not know the extent of which the people that we're letting in, what they're doing? We're supposed to be, letting people into the country that can help, that can work, that can pay taxes, that can add, that can assimilate with our society, that can make our country great. That has not been the case. We're letting people in to the diminished effect of our own citizens, and that is wrong. When charity starts at home, we need to address this, and we need to speak up about it without being called far right or racist or anything like that, because we're not. We have to take care of ourselves, and we have to take care of those closest to us, which are our own citizens.
And Ben, Benjamin, it would be wonderful if we could take everybody from around the world. It'd be great if we had unlimited resources and space and money and schools and hospitals, but we just can't. And do you think we're at a watershed moment now, where actually, in no small part, thanks to GB News, we are allowing people to have these conversations, because you just wouldn't have heard these sorts of conversations on the mainstream media before we existed? Are we at a tipping point now where even those in power will start to say, all right, we might have a point here?
I mean, I think we have a responsibility and a willingness, for that matter, to take in some refugees and people from awful situations. But the question is the scale of it. And the other question is the one that's really come to the fore from incidents like this, which is the security of it and how porous the people we let in are and their permission. So in this Telegraph story, it talks about how Albanian gangs are advertising on TikTok and other places to say you can have total security, total safety for £7,000. You can fly into Dublin and we'll get you across that border from the Republic to Northern Ireland. Now, this raises several questions. One is, what checks happen at Dublin that these people are saying that you can just fly in there and get in without questions asked? The next is that what questions and vetting happens before you get leave to remain. One person who can answer that is Robert Jenrick. He was the minister responsible, now in Reform UK, but I don't think we've had any particularly fulsome answers from him today. And then the third point I'd raise is that when we're talking about who we should and should not let into the country, I think it's really notable that what the Telegraph has found is Albanian gangs, because the #1 foreign nationality in British prisons is Albanians. Now, we have a returns deal that came in about 2 years ago with the Albanian government, because they were behind a lot of the people coming over in boats, because they were coming here for criminal purposes. And so I actually think we should put a lot more focus on this Balkan country, on the Albanians, because their organised crime is behind so much of these problems, whether it's the people smuggling, drug gangs, or sexual violence and sexual abuse in prostitution. There's a big responsibility for quite a small group of people.
No, there is. But Yvette Cooper, when she was secretary, she said, the Home Secretary, she said we need to smash those gangs. And we've had clips time and time again ad nauseum of Starmer saying we're going to smash the gangs. I've said it here before, years ago, that the business model had to be smashed. That's, you know, we need to start looking outwards, but and, you know, in order to, you know, get inwards sorted.
Yeah. OK. Thank you both. Still to come this evening on The Late Show Live.
We'll see what happens, but we hit them hard yesterday, and we're going to hit them again hard today, in case you miss it, in case you don't turn on your television set.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Box Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather update, brought to you from the Met Office. A damp and overcast day for much of the UK. Weather fronts moved in overnight. It does look a little bit drier into tomorrow and even drier into the weekend. But for now, we've got a wet start out there for many of us, and the rain will persist through much of the day, bringing with it a lot of cloud too. So very little way in the way of sunshine to come. It will feel quite humid out there too, as we've got southerly winds. We're in what's known as the warm sector through much of today. So temperatures will be in the mid to high teens, but it will feel quite humid. I think you will notice a difference stepping out there. It will last through the night as well into Friday. Much of the rain does push away to the east throughout this evening, but it's still going to be quite a damp evening for much of Scotland, particularly across more western areas. Quite a lot of cloud around, a bit of a grey end to the day. A bit more in the way of showery rain across parts of Northern Ireland, so it could be a little bit brighter than it has been through much of the day into this evening. A similar story for southwestern areas of the UK. Into the southeast, where we're just closer to that rain, we're more likely to see a bit of a damp end to the day. But the bulk of the rain does push away to the east through much of the night, and in its place we just see some showery rain moving through, so more widely a drier night to come for many of us, but quite a lot of cloud around, and we hold on to that humid feel throughout much of the night. So temperatures not really falling away much overnight, still in the mid-teens for many of us to start the day. Quite a close feeling overnight. Here's a weather front pushing into parts of the Republic of Ireland and then into Northern Ireland. pushing into Wales and central areas through lunchtime and into the afternoon, just bringing thicker cloud for a time and a risk of some rain. Showers will affect the far northwest. Elsewhere, probably is going to feel fairly dry. Very limited sunshine, however, but temperatures still climbing a little bit higher to the low 20s in the southeast. Have a good day.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Box Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
From cold mornings
to warm family brunches.
From football to tennis.
In the car.
In the kitchen.
GB News Breakfast is there. With the stories you need and the conversations that matter.
Anyway, let's talk business.
Well, it has been a historic night in British politics.
It's astonishing, isn't it?
We're here again.
To start your day just right. GB News Breakfast.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Some people enjoy lazy Sunday mornings, but not me.
What's the truth of the matter? So that's a very live question. Would you support him if he waters down these plans?
Before the spin sets in, I'll be getting to the truth.
This is personal.
No soft questions, no easy answers.
It's one thing if the state has rules in this country. It's another thing whether the police and others actually police them.
Setting the agenda and holding those in power to account.
You can't really blame her if the system is set up this way.
You will not want to miss it, trust me. The Camilla Tominey Show, Sundays from 9:30, only on GB News.
Welcome to Free Speech Nation with me, Josh Howard. This is the show where each week we see what's happening in the world of culture, current affairs and politics.
First we'll say, welcome to the UK.
And we're not afraid to use our free speech so that you can use yours.
It's not controversial in the slightest to anyone who hasn't lost their mind.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights at 7 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I ever got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Very good evening, good morning. This is The Late Show Live with me, Bev Turner. Coming up on the show this evening, we are going to be looking again at what is happening in Northern Ireland.
Start with the hottest news story that's going on right now. It's stunning and it's awful and it's disgusting. It's out of Northern Ireland.
And it has caught the imagination of the most famous broadcasters here in America. Why is that? What is the perception people have here in the US of what is happening in the UK? Also tonight. He's not a footballer, it's a referee. Somali Omar Artan, well, he's been refused entry to the US. He was due to officiate at the World Cup. The White House, though, say that he has links to suspected terror group members. Is this an immigration policy too far? Or does the US have important lessons to teach the UK about border control? Also,
we'll see what happens, but we hit them hard yesterday, and we're going to hit them again hard today in case you miss it, in case you don't turn on your television set.
Right now, US military has launched strikes on Iran after President Trump said earlier that forces would hit the country hard following an exchange of fire earlier this week. Plus,
we used to have an unwritten social contract that each generation would do better than the last. That contract's being broken, and these young people, 1 million young people not in education, employment and training and rising, they're on the front line of that broken contract.
that's right. Britain has 1 million young people aged 16 to 24 who are not in education, employment or training. But according to a new survey, the proportion of university students who believe they are getting more bang for their buck has reached the highest point in more than a decade. But is it really what it seems? We're going to be asking whether university is worth the time and money. Also tonight.
Graceful, but I think it's really hard to manage as well, really hard to police and control.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure what else I could do about it, but I know it is rife and that we're being overly cautious with our phones while we're here, yeah.
What do we do about phone theft? Met Commissioner Sir Mark Rowley is pushing the Home Secretary to force the phone companies to make stolen devices harder to use as he seeks to wage a war on phone theft in London. I'm going to be talking to former Scotland Yard detective to ask whether it is all too little too late. Also this.
How do you ask for a drink correctly? Reese, how do you ask for a drink?
That's the brilliant Joe Fost super nanny there from Channel 4. Well, new analysis by the University College London has said that not outlawing smacking in England and Northern Ireland is a huge missed opportunity and deeply disappointing. But should the state have anything to do with how you discipline your own kids? I'm Bev Turner and this is The Late Show Live. Delighted to say a stellar panel with me this evening. Political commentator Hilary Fordwich is here and also Democratic strategist Richard Goodstein. And in London we've got journalists and broadcasters Claire Muldoon and Benjamin Butterworth. Thank you all guys for joining us this evening. Right, the World Cup kicks off tomorrow. Are you excited, Hilary?
Yes, I am, and I've got a way to explain it to Americans because they actually don't really get it. They don't get how we feel about it. And I said, well, if you wrap in the Super Bowl, the World Series, which is the baseball, the Super Bowl's the football, the big final, the Stanley Cup final, which is the big hockey final, and
the NBA.
And the NBA, and Christmas and Thanksgiving, your love of your mother and your wife and all your children, wrap that all into one. And that's a little fraction about how we feel about the World Cup. And if you haven't seen the ad, 2 World Wars and 1 World Cup, England. Well, you must see that.
You're clearly quite excited about it.
Oh, I am.
Well, this one guy, unfortunately, is not excited anymore. Top Somali referee Omar Artan was due to come and officiate here in America, and the US have said, I'm sorry, you're not coming in. The White House say that he's got links to suspected terror group members. Artan was stopped at the border whilst attempting to enter, triggering a major international outcry. Now, a US administration official later said that Customs and Border Protection officers had determined that he posed a national security risk, and a subsequent investigation reportedly uncovered derogatory information, including associations with suspected members of terrorist organisations, which means he is inadmissible under the Immigration and Nationality Act. He, of course, has strongly denied any association with any terrorist groups. A FIFA spokesperson said the organisation had been informed that the Somali officials' immigration status will not be changed at present. Richard Goodstein, you may not be as excited about the World Cup as the Brits are, but the significance of this story for America, I think, is quite huge, actually, because Somalia is on the list of countries at the moment that people can't come in. Does this case make that look unfair?
Well, I'd like to get the details. I think we've seen a lot coming out of immigration crackdowns that when you kind of pull away the pieces of the onion don't really kind of amount to all that, but the allegation kind of sticks, and that's all that matters. And this is not really an appealable verdict by immigration officials to keep him out. Look, I think Hillary's put her finger on it. I don't think there's anything that will happen in the U.S. in my lifetime and my kids' lifetime that will change the kind of appreciation that the rest of the world has for football. It's been now decades and decades that there's been this emphasis on kids playing football here in the U.S., soccer, and the U.S. team's still kind of middling. And there's unsold seats in some of the big arenas for the opening round of the World Cup. FIFA seems to be dumping groups of tickets, into the secondary markets and so forth. So the enthusiasm, I think, is inconsistent with where the rest of the world thinks. I think the hoopla will be created because that's what the U.S. does well. We'll kind of make up for it. But I don't think that there's anybody in the U.S. who will quite be as invested in it as the way Hillary just described it.
I think you're right.
I just want to say as well, I can't really say enough that, of course, this referee denies any allegations whatsoever. His statement was very magnanimous, though, about not being allowed in. He didn't sound bitter.
Well, I think also, if you're in the position of law enforcement, Bev, think about it. You can't afford to make mistakes in this day and age. Yeah. Much better to err on the side of a judicious and exponential caution than it is to let a mistake happen on your watch and people's lives are at stake.
Yeah, well, this is very true. Let me ask my team in London. Benjamin Butterworth, how excited are you about the World Cup happening? Is it so tomorrow's the first match, is it? I thought it was at the weekend. Shows how much I know. How thrilled are you, Ben?
Do you know, I'm not a football follower, I'll be honest, even though 2 of my nieces play for Manchester City girls and I'm related to a Manchester United footballer. But I like the World Cup because it's one of those rare times, a bit like royal events, when everyone joins in, you have all the, dare I say, all the flags out and everyone goes to the pub and it's a real community spirit, and that's the bit I enjoy. But I always think of football fans, how do you cope with the stress? Because I find it completely unbearable watching a game with England in it.
Which Manchester United footballer are you related to, Benjamin Butterworth?
Marcus Rashford. He's, my aunt is married to his cousin, is his mother.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Well, that is a little bit of trivia that I would never have guessed in a million years.
And we're both from Wilmslow in Cheshire.
You're both posh Manchester, I know. So just back, Benjamin, then, to this story of this referee, because banning entire countries from coming into America is obviously very, very controversial. The Somali community in America have been found, members of them, to have been guilty of all sorts of massive fraud in Minnesota and a couple of other states, I think, as well. So when this guy was told he couldn't come in, I thought this might have kicked back on the American government quite badly. It doesn't seem to have done, and it sounds like they may have found what they believe to be his association with terrorism.
I mean, my heart really breaks for this guy because, you know, if he is, he's clearly a very talented referee to have progressed to this stage from a country like Somalia, and if it's not a fair conclusion, then you can imagine the kind of excitement and life achievement that's been denied to him. I know that Canadian officials have actually said that if they can, they will let him be referee for one of the 13 matches due to take place in Vancouver or Toronto. It seems like maybe it's not possible because they have to do a degree of training in Florida, but they're trying to make it work. The question I would say is that I wonder how much law enforcement knows about the intricacies of Somali government and terrorist groups. They obviously pulled him aside without the evidence and then subsequently claimed they found it. So is this just trying to make an example of him because the president has made a fuss about some serious problems among the Somali community? Yeah. I was actually in Somalia 3 weeks ago. I was travelling across Mogadishu, and it is one of the most dangerous places in the world. You know, I had armed security and a bulletproof car to get around. But it's also the case that, having been there, I know that, you know, lots of the jurisdictions, including parts of Mogadishu and the rest of the country entirely, are run by terrorist groups. So when they say he has an association with it, I would question just how tenuous that could be. Because, for example, you know, if you're working with the officials that run the government and regulate, say, the football organisation in the jurisdiction of Somalia that you live in, which is basically run under clan rules, then maybe that would be the association with a terrorist group, but what choice do you have if they're the people in charge? And so, you know, I can't help but wonder how loose the claim is and whether it's got more to do with making an example.
Yeah, Claire, what do you make of it? We're going to see a lot of sport and politics combined in the next few weeks with this World Cup, aren't we? Get used to it.
Well, it's taken me 28 years to get worked up for another World Cup, because that's how long it's taken Scotland to qualify. And incidentally, Hilary, Scotland are part of the UK, and the UK won the wars, not just England. But also, just on this Omar Artan thing, three things I'd like to say. He's not the only one to have had a visa refuted before even taking off. Scottish fans have been stopped from getting their visas. And secondly, when he left Somalia, I know what it's like to travel. Bev, you do it regularly. Travel over to the US. If you don't have your papers in order before you even leave the UK, it's difficult to board a plane. So he was interrogated for 11 hours at Miami airport. It was then found that he was perhaps had links to terror organisations, and the Americans went, no, I'm sorry. And if you're coming from a country like Somalia that's had so much irk and so much financial depravity in Minnesota, then I'm afraid you're just going to have to take the hit. Whether or not you've been made the excuse or made an example of, I really don't care. But thirdly, where is FIFA? Now, I know that FIFA and the ESPN report about 11 hours ago have said we don't get involved in visas, but every company that employs people to work overseas has a form of sponsorship or has a form of helping the person get to the country to do a job. Omar Artan would have been working for FIFA, no one else. But look what else America has done. They've only allowed Iran to play if they're playing in Mexico. So there's so much going on here. And the reason, I mean, Richard, you said that there's a lot of seats left unsold. The reason they're left unsold is because it's so unaffordable for fans to save up, buy tickets. It's extortionate.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, and it's because of the corporatisation, though, isn't it? This is the problem. These big sports matches now, it's like so much of the problems in the world now. It can just be blamed on these massive transnational corporations that can afford to just buy up thousands of seats, and it means that the normal people can't buy them, Richard.
That's true. Although, again, I went on to StubHub, a secondary market in the US for World Cup seats.
Can I just say, from what I thought you said Stud Hub.
Thank you. Yeah, that's probably a different site that doesn't interest me. If it exists, I will confess I've never checked it out.
Benjamin's on it.
But I do use StubHub from time to time for tickets, and there were actually affordable seats. There was seats under $200 because, again, FIFA ended up with a bunch of unsold seats and they kind of dumped them onto these secondary markets. So you didn't. It's not like the New York Knicks in New York City where people are paying a minimum of $10,000 to be in the nosebleed seats. Right. You know, six figures to be anywhere close to the court. It's not like that for FIFA for whatever reason, and I think it doesn't speak well, honestly, with as big a population as these cities have in the U.S. in particular, to have unsold seats. It's really a bad look.
Yeah. What's the mood like in the UK, guys? Just tell me, and as American guests out here, people living here in America, how excited is the UK for this World Cup?
Well,
Claire?
I think so. I mean, from where I live in London, you know it well, Bev, people are really excited. And, you know, the pubs are going to open up and stay. I mean, even their local parish centre is going to show some of the games. It's going to be great. I've got Brazilian friends, because, of course, Scotland are in the Brazilian draw. And I'm hoping to host something in my house. It's really great. And it's this cohesion, this hope that people can get at a time of the World Cup fever. And I have to say, we will be knocked out, and then I will be an England supporter.
Thank you, Claire. But, you know, never have we needed something positive to bring the country together more than we do right now.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, let me know what you think at home. GBNews.com/you're saying. I'm going to try and get to your messages in just a minute. Moving on, though, now. A new survey has found that university students who believe they are getting value for money has reached its highest level in more than a decade. The findings show that 45% of undergraduates rated the value for money of their courses as good or very good, which is up from 37% last year. Teaching quality emerged as a key factor behind the drive. Let's get a take now of reporter at Reason magazine, Reem Ibrahim. Reem, you have not long left university, but I think this figure that's saying that 45% of undergrads say they got value for money still means that 55% think they didn't. This research is trying to spin us, isn't it? It's trying to convince us that universities are value for money, are they?
Yes, and of course what you're saying is that the polling is looking specifically at university students that of course have just forked out an enormous amount of money. When we're looking at society as a whole, it is abundantly clear that the majority of British people do not think that university degrees are worth it. So the British Social Attitude Survey came out, I believe it was about a week ago, and they're saying that actually about 34% of people in 2025 think that a university education just is not worth the amount of time and money, which is an increase of about 14% since 2005. So I left university in 2023. I went to LSE, which is a fantastic university. I had a brilliant time, and I do think it absolutely was worth the money. The problem is that taxpayers are currently being forced to foot the bill for lots and lots of what we like to call Mickey Mouse degrees. These are degrees that do not improve your potential graduate salary. They do not improve the way in which you're able to look at those particular subjects. A lot of those students do not even show up to lectures, and they are paying enormous amounts of money purely just for a certificate. Now, I think that in 2026, lots of employers are very understanding of the fact that university degrees do not automatically mean that a person is ready for employment.
And what about the debt? This is the thing that I find so distressing for your generation, because I'm of the generation, and Hilary as well, that we didn't pay for our university fees. I find it so obvious that we shouldn't pay for our university fees. It just seems so blatant to me that we cannot allow young people to start their lives after university with sometimes more than 50 grand of debt around your neck, and we wonder why we've got a mental health crisis. I can't imagine the burden of what that would feel like. I think it's genuinely one of the worst things we've ever done in the country, is to expect people to pay for their university studies. But then similarly, there's too many people going.
Yeah, I mean, I actually disagree with you. I don't think that paying for university is a bad thing. You said that you didn't pay for your degree. You did, through taxes. And ultimately, I don't think that people that do not go to university should be forced to pay for other people's degrees through taxation. They don't directly benefit. If they don't increase their potential income, it is not fair to expect other taxpayers to foot the bill for your degree. I do think, however, the current system is completely unsustainable. So the reason why we have so many degrees that are basically Mickey Mouse, they do not improve your potential graduate salary, is because there is absolutely no financial link between students and universities. There are financial links, of course, between students and the government and the student loans company, but there isn't a financial link between universities and students. So a university can provide a very, very poor quality degree, and university students basically have no way of voting with their feet, of showing that that particular degree is not of high quality. Also, because of the massive cap, because university degrees can only cost about £9,250 a year, that cap also means that basically every university charges the maximum they possibly can. The entire system is unsustainable. It is predominantly because the government have got involved far too much. University degrees being free at the point of use or point of actually having that education is definitely not sustainable. But at the same time, the current system where all taxpayers, the shelf stacker in Tesco's is being forced to pay for your Oxford degree, I don't think that that is a fair system. Now, what we should do is have a system in which university degrees are linked to your potential graduate salary. And so we know exactly what those particular students are able to earn. You're only paying what is actually valuable to you. Has your university degree actually added value to your life and to your potential career? That is a far better system. It means that students are actually paying for what they receive.
Well, except that with the advent of AI taking every white-collar job in the world, we've just thrown that sort of policy. Unfortunately, Reem, is probably needs to be ripped up. Even if we'd come up with it now, we need to come up with a different one, because actually anybody that's working with their hands are the people who are going to be making money, and those people working with their brains, forget about it. Reem, great to see you. Reem Ibrahim there from Reason magazine. Let me come to my panel. I can see you're desperate to get in there, Hilary.
I think the failing of our Western society, definitely the UK and definitely the US, is unlike Germany that has trade schools. It's the failure to put people into the trades and train them in the trades, like you say, working with your hands. And now, particularly with the advent of AI, it's even more imperative, and it's been neglected for more than a generation. That's an absolutely huge issue. In the United States, they actually predict that as we age, there won't be anybody to even fix the air conditioning units because there aren't enough people. And I believe it's something like 83% of all blue-collar, what do you call them, HVAC, it's heating, air conditioning companies are owned by people that are less than 3 years away from retirement, and so there's no one to take over those firms. So what are we going to do with them?
Oh, what are we going to do with them? Let's bring in the whole panel on this one, because I think the pace of change at the moment in terms of the qualifications that will be required is astonishing, Claire. You've got children, young adults at university or having just left university. How much, when you think about it, how valuable have their degrees been? Will they be? Will they even use them now with the advent of AI taking so many laptop jobs? I think we lost your audio, Claire, actually. Sorry. Oh, are you there?
Am I here? Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, we can hear you now. Sorry, we didn't catch any of that.
Right, so my first one got a degree in geography, which she's not using as a subject, but it gave her the pathway to a graduate job with Deloitte that she's still with. My second one went to a Russell Group university, got a law degree, but she's got no interest in being a lawyer, so her vocational degree really is meaningless. My third one went to Leeds and she read ancient history and philosophy. She got a grad job, was made redundant, and is now nannying. And my last one, my son, is actually going to be graduating from Newcastle in a couple of weeks' time. And he is not going to use his geography degree either, but it's given him a pathway into a graduate job, which he's actually working with this company when he was an undergrad. So ask me if it was worth them leaving university with £50,000, £60,000 worth of debt. No, it wasn't. Caitlin's paying something ridiculous like £600 a month to pay hers off. And then it's just, you think of kids that live in Scotland that went to Scottish universities, kids that live in Northern Ireland that went to Northern Ireland universities like Queen's or Ulster. They paid much less in their fees, and the outcomes are still the same. So you figure me this. Can you honestly tell me that a degree from LSE, Oxford, Cambridge, St Andrews, if you're an English student, and the University of the West of Scotland, West of England, UEA, Birmingham City, Leeds Beckett, are those degrees from those universities the same? Of course they're not. So why are the students going there being charged the same? I'll tell you, because Tony Blair said, you can go to university, you can get a degree, on you go and get it. And now what's happened? The funnel is stuck. They're all stuck in the middle. It's like that Pink Floyd, Another Brick in the Wall, where they've got all the kids going in the mincer and coming out as mincemeat. That's what we've got.
Benjamin, how did Tony Blair not see that trying to get 50% of people to go to university was going to end up in a completely disproportionate working population that don't have the skills that we require across the board?
Well, there was a very good logic to it, which was a 21st century economy that is migrating from a manufacturing industry that had fallen apart by the end of the 20th century, moving into a new world where education and tertiary and service sector jobs are the kind of things that will lead an economy like Britain, and indeed that is 80% of our economy. And if you look at comparable nations like Japan, South Korea, Canada, that have higher levels of graduates than us, they have very successful economies from those types of workers. So there was a very clear economic logic to it. But I think one problem that's come to be is that have a false incentive for universities, which is that the incentive for them is to bring in as much revenue as possible from as many students as possible, but not to maximise the outcomes of those students. And so they get the money up front when the person starts their degree and does 3 or 4 years there, but their fate after they graduate has no relationship with the funding or the access that the university gets. And so I think that's where you get a situation where degrees that are not useful, that are not adding to the economy, are often numerous, and taxpayers, of course, are funding them at least in the short term, and that's where the mistake is. I would add on that on my own experience, I went to LSE, like Reem, although a few years before her, and although you mentioned earlier I'm from posh Manchester, I was born in a council estate. My dad was a painter decorator, my mum was a cleaner, but mainly they were both in prison when I was growing up. And I went to a local state comp school. You know, nobody in my family had been to university, they didn't have any idea about that. And I can't get away from the fact that when I started at LSE, that completely changed my life, because suddenly I was surrounded by people from very successful families with very high ambitions, and I set those ambitions for myself. But at the same time, I really had no interest in the politics and economics degree, and you know, the actual stuff I learned I've barely ever used. So it was more about the social gateway it gave, and the truth is LSE or Oxford or Cambridge will give you that, but as Claire rightly says, if you're at UCLan or something, you may well not be getting that benefit from your fees.
Yeah, it's a very good point. And I, you know, again, state school educated, went to university, met a public school boy for the first time. I'd never met one before. These sort of beautifully spoken young men. I mean, I've met quite a few of them since, to be honest. But anyway, that's by the by. But you know, but my point being that it was a gateway to social mobility. Yeah. It was about realising that you meet people from other backgrounds and different experiences. And yes, I did English. And yes, of course, I use that every day in this job, writing things. But, Richard, we can't deprive people of that. It makes me sad to think I would deprive my kids of that experience of life. But similarly, I don't want them to come out with so much debt and to kind of waste 3 years. I also think maybe the degree should be 2 years, not 3. What do you think, Richard?
Well, a few things. First of all, in the U.S., of course, there's private schools, the Harvard, Yale, Stanfords, where there's no, you know, there's financial aid, but most of these people are paying full freight, which is now somewhere between $80,000 and $90,000 a year. It's just crazy, right? Per year for a 4-year degree, and then you have state schools. Penn State and other state schools, Michigan, and so forth, where basically the state is subsidizing most of that. So what you pay out of pocket is a small fraction of what the people pay to one of these Ivy League schools. Is there a correlation in terms of economic outcomes with the people who are going to the Ivy League schools? I don't think we want to deny that as a possibility for the high achievers, but I think it's the case that people are starting to realize that this debt just doesn't make sense. And therefore, people are going to trade schools, something where they're not necessarily, people who are kind of middling students aren't shooting for something that they really don't have their heart in, and therefore there's more of a demand for people building these data centers, right? It's not just heating and air conditioning, it's all the things that we know are going to be essential to driving the economy. And if you talk to the companies that are behind them, they just are desperate to find people who can help them do something with their hands.
Yeah, and the way that the jobs market is changing, though, with the advent of AI, I think means we have to sit down and have a serious conversation about what the education system needs to be teaching our children, because it's just changing within the last 12 to 6 months, Claire. Do you worry about your kids as well? I mean, you've given us an idea of what they do now, but what that future looks like with those white-collar jobs?
Absolutely. Even Anna, the one that went to Leeds, she said to me today, Mum, I don't know if I should do a master's or, you know, do a law conversion or do something else. And then she said, but if I do a law conversion, unless I go into criminal law, I won't have a job because all the contracts will be written by AI. Yeah. And the only thing she could come up with was teaching. you know, to be a reinstated, employable labour market force.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's so difficult for them, it really is, because they're just caught between a rock and a hard place. They can't live in London unless they live with me, in which they're colonising my flat, but that's another story, and I'll bring that up another time, I'm sure. But it's really difficult, and I really, there doesn't seem to be, we've spoken about the anger, we've spoken about the disenchantment, the disenfranchisement of the young, of the youth, not only in Belfast at the moment, but all over the UK. And it's compounded by the fact that AI will be taking over. We saw yesterday in some of the papers here in the UK that a girl is taking a degree course in plumbing. It's like an apprenticeship almost in plumbing, because they will need our chippies, we'll need our sparkies, we'll need our plumbers. My goodness me, we've even got one, Hannah Big Spender, I call her, because of her Gucci shirt today, in the Houses of Parliament. The Green MP, the Green plumber. So you just...
Can I just say that I think employers bear some responsibility for this, because it's now the case, as your kids may well be finding out in recent years, that loads of employers say you have to have a degree, you have to be a graduate to even be eligible to apply for their jobs. And so actually, if you're to change the structure whereby people do degrees that aren't worthwhile for the sake of it, running up loads of debt for them, the short term for the taxpayer, then you have to say to employers that you can't have that graduate requirement, otherwise you're creating all the wrong incentives. And what employers are essentially doing is getting their youngest workers to pile on debt they'll have for 30 or 40 years, instead of employers paying for the training to get people skilled up, which is what would have happened a generation ago.
And I hate to... Sorry, Richard, go on.
One quick thing. We'll hear his name over the next couple of years. Josh Shapiro, who is the governor of the state of Pennsylvania, one of the first things he did when he came into office 4 years ago was basically wipe out the requirement that you needed a college degree for a wide swath of jobs that you really didn't need one for, but that had been a requirement. I think over time we're going to see that that's very wise and had been restrictive, and I think as that is opening up, it's giving people opportunities that they should have had all along, but they didn't.
Well, and also here in the US with the reshoring of manufacturing, another huge issue is that the manufacturing, when NAFTA was signed, the North America Free Trade Agreement, so much of our manufacturing went abroad that you didn't need them. And of course, that's exactly what's happened in Ireland. When you have the manufacturing base leaves, you don't have, it's a chicken and egg. You don't have people going into the trades because the jobs aren't there and the businesses don't demand it. We now in the US have a problem where we have, obviously there are people that are unemployed, but the companies are complaining that people that they need that don't have the right kind of skills. They're not being trained.
And the other thing, people who know a lot more about this than I do in terms of what the future landscape of work looks like, they keep saying to me, it's all very well that you're going to have plumbers and electricians and builders. No one's going to be able to pay them for their work. Because where do the wages come from for the people who don't work in those industries when everything is being outsourced to AI? We're looking at a situation, I mean, Benjamin would love this, where the government just gives everybody loads of money and you have a universal basic income. That's the only, that is looking desperately, tragically,
Elon Musk
like
says
an image of the future.
Elon Musk says no one's going to work, and I wonder what on earth are we going to all do? Golf?
And I've been around a lot of U.S. politicians, especially Democrats lately, but I think Republicans will say the same thing. In 2028, the presidential election, the defining issue will be this combination of AI and data centers, which are getting under people's skin. And frankly, neither party knows quite what to do with them.
Yeah, well, in the UK, we haven't got enough space, enough energy, or enough water at the moment to power our data centers, which might actually end up being a blessing in disguise, because it might mean that the march of AI has to be rowed back on a little bit and gives us some time to work out what the heck our kids are going to do for a living. Right, moving on. Let's have a quick look at some of the other main news stories making the headlines here in America. Bill Gates told a congressional committee today that he never had a personal relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. He said that he cut ties with him when he could not deliver on fundraising for the tech billionaire's philanthropic efforts. Gates appeared voluntarily in Washington at a closed-door hearing with the House Oversight Committee, looking into Epstein, and also reportedly named other powerful people that Jeffrey Epstein approached for fundraising. In unwelcome news for President Trump, inflation in the US has increased at the fastest pace in 3 years. Surging oil prices amid the fragile ceasefire with Iran have weighed heavily on global energy markets. Energy prices rose by 3.9% in May, following a 3.8% increase in April. Americans are feeling the pressure at the pumps, with many speculating it could have a bad effect on the president's party come the midterms. In what is a staggering rise, petrol prices here in America are more than 40% higher than they were this time last year. And finally, on Tuesday, a teenager in Texas was sentenced to 35 years after a stabbing at a high school athletics event. It's the trial of Carmelo Anthony which has polarized America. The death of Austin Metcalf in April 25 drew national attention, sparking a debate about school safety and self-defense. Both of the boys were 17 at the time of the incident. Still to come this evening on The Late Show Live.
We'll see what happens. But we hit them hard yesterday, and we're going to hit them again hard today, in case you miss it, in case you don't turn on your television set.
Happening now, the American military has launched strikes on Iran after President Trump said earlier that forces would hit the country hard following an exchange of fire earlier this week. Lots more in the next hour. No break. A quick look at the weather.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. A damp and overcast day for much of the UK. Weather fronts moved in overnight. It does look a little bit drier into tomorrow and even drier into the weekend. But for now, we've got a wet start out there for many of us, and the rain will persist through much of the day, bringing with it a lot of cloud too. So very little way in the way of sunshine to come. It will feel quite humid out there too, as we've got southerly winds. We're in what's known as the warm sector through much of today. So temperatures will be in the mid to high teens, but it will feel quite humid. I think you will notice a difference stepping out there. It will last through the night as well into Friday. Much of the rain does push away to the east throughout this evening, but it's still going to be quite a damp evening for much of Scotland, particularly across more western areas. Quite a lot of cloud around, a bit of a grey end to the day. A bit more in the way of showery rain across parts of Northern Ireland, so it could be a little bit brighter than it has been through much of the day into this evening. A similar story for southwestern areas of the UK. Into the southeast, where we're just closer to that rain, we're more likely to see a bit of a damp end to the day. But the bulk of the rain does push away to the east through much of the night, and in its place we just see some showery rain moving through, so more widely a drier night to come for many of us, but quite a lot of cloud around, and we hold on to that humid feel throughout much of the night. So temperatures not really falling away much overnight, still in the mid-teens for many of us to start the day. Quite a close feeling overnight. Here's a weather front pushing into parts of the Republic of Ireland and then into Northern Ireland, pushing into Wales and central areas through lunchtime and into the afternoon, just bringing thicker cloud for a time and a risk of some rain. Showers will affect the far northwest. Elsewhere, probably is going to feel fairly dry. Very limited sunshine, however, but temperatures still climbing a little bit higher to the low 20s in the southeast. Have a good day.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Welcome back. So the United States has launched strikes on Iran tonight after President Trump said earlier that forces would hit the country hard following an exchange of fire earlier this week. This was President Trump earlier today.
So we'll see what happens. But we hit them hard yesterday, and we're going to hit them again hard today, in case you miss it, in case you don't turn on your television set. And we'll see what happens with the deal. We were really close to a deal, but they keep tapping us along. They keep playing us for suckers because, you know what? They dealt with some very stupid presidents. I have to say that. I'm embarrassed to say it. Some very stupid people were sitting there.
So earlier this week, an American Apache helicopter was downed by Iran. Tensions, of course, escalating now. So let's speak to Editor-in-Chief at the Foreign Desk, Lisa Daftari. Good evening, Lisa, and ask you, just how distant does a lasting peace agreement feel now?
Farther than ever. I mean, we knew this, right? But I know that Donald Trump is coming face to face with his reality. And if you watch what Donald Trump is doing, he's saying, we hit them hard, we're going to hit them hard again, but wink, wink to the Ayatollahs, not hard enough that you shouldn't come to the negotiating table and sign a deal with us. But again, anyone watching this is asking, do they really look like partners in peace? Do they really look like they're going to uphold any deal we do sign with them? I'm all for peace through strength. This is what he's doing, and he's doing it in a correct way in terms of textbook foreign policy, but we're not dealing with a normal actor. We're dealing with terrorists. We're dealing with individuals who know how to play out the clock, work around our sanctions, put money into deadly proxies, amass their missiles and their drones, and again, start spinning those centrifuges to build a deadly weapon. That's just who they are.
What targets do you think President Trump might have in mind now, Lisa, with this latest round of bombs? Because we understand that most of the targets had already been taken out.
Right, and they stopped short of infrastructure, bridges, that which would, again, set back the Iranian people should they have to nation build once again. So they did stop short of that. And they did stop in a place where, again, the regime could potentially come to the negotiating table when what has been degraded is military, nuclear, weapons depots, etc. And that was the goal for Donald Trump in that capacity, to have all the foreign policy tools at his disposal, every crayon out of the box, as we say. So that he would leave room again for kinetic action, but also for diplomacy. This is, it's just the reality of the DNA of the regime that we're dealing with. Foregone conclusion being, if we do want lasting peace in the Middle East, it's not going to be with this regime.
Now, we know these four men that we're looking at on the screen here, J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio, Pete Hegseth, President Trump. We know they don't want to attack civilian infrastructure. They've been really clear about that. But would the Iranian regime tempt them to do so? Let me phrase it like that. In other words, would the Iranian leaders care if the bridges were taken out because of the fact that that would affect their people?
That's such a great question, and you really zoomed in on what the nuance here is, and that is you're dealing with a regime that killed 30 to 50,000 of its best and brightest in January, who routinely go into the best of universities and round up students, who don't mind that there's a brain drain and the brightest of Iranians leave, that they execute young people, artists and poets and journalists and so on. So you're dealing with a regime that does not care for or represent the majority of 90 million Iranian people. So to your point, would they actually care if parts of their nation were destroyed? As long as they stay in power, as long as they can rake in the money, and so many of their relatives are living abroad, spending money, wearing designer clothing, being educated at the finest of universities, while Iranians at home don't have those same freedoms. People ask me about this ideology. And what's interesting about this ideology is that it's not that these mullahs are so religious that they're steadfast this ideology. It's that they have learned that for 47 years, this ideology has kept them in power. So they will use this ideology not to die by, but to live by, and to continue reign, and to continue raking in the money and to enrich themselves while the people of Iran suffer. It's just going to be more of the same. I think with time.
Lisa, that story that I just read out about the fact that America's seen a rise in inflation this month actually is a victory for Iran, because that shows that their strategy is working against the American government. But it also means that the American government have to start factoring in very carefully getting the straits open again, getting the oil coming out in the amount that they need it to. How might that play out, do you think, from a strategy point of view?
Yeah, again, a great point in all of this to say the Iran regime knows exactly the vulnerabilities of the American president and the American public. What they did was not only elite capture through our universities, not only using our own media, our segments of our media against us in telling a different narrative about this war, and also knowing that there would be no appetite to go forward if gas prices went up. We're upon the summer months where people want to take their vacations, they want to get in their car and they want to pump gas and they don't want to pay, an arm and a leg for a tank of gas. So all of this pressure is on Donald Trump. He's also up against the clock with the World Cup starting here. We have the midterms coming up. So they will try to play out the clock in order to, again, factor in these vulnerabilities, believing that Donald Trump does not have the appetite to go back to war, to escalate this war, but at the same time, they make these provocations, whether it's in the Strait of Hormuz, whether it's with their nuclear program. They have, in effect, been the best narrative tellers here. They move the entire story from their nuclear program, which was our strategic imperative, to the Strait of Hormuz. We weren't even talking about the Strait of Hormuz, and now that's yet another challenge for us to surmount. And then we talk about taking their enriched uranium. They're not even talking about that. They're like, well, wait a minute, how about Hezbollah in Lebanon? Let's negotiate that first. So they have a way at the negotiating table. That is their weapon of choice. That is where they have been successful in the past. And look, to their credit, they have been successful, because for sheer survival is victory. And look now. We're not at war. We're at a semi-ceasefire, and they're continuing to stay in power for now.
Yeah. Lisa, I've said it before, but I've said it again. I wish you were around that negotiating table advising President Trump, because I think you speak such incredible sense from a position of such experience on this topic. Thank you so much, Lisa Daftari, Editor-in-Chief at the Foreign Desk. Let's talk to my panel about this. We can bring you all in. Hillary, I think when President Trump wakes up at 3 o'clock in the morning, not that he ever sleeps, but I think when he wakes up at 3 o'clock in the morning, this is the issue that he probably turns over in his head. It is looking absolutely intractable.
It is, and it goes backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards. I think the issue here is that the Iranians don't care about their own people. So not like a regular society where there would be immense pressure on the leadership if the people were so disaffected to be able to switch off the internet. Of course, that's total and utter control. There hasn't been the uprising that I believe the Trump administration and many others had predicted and were expecting. One thing I do think is in the favor, though, of timing is that the guard there hasn't been able to be paid. The police haven't been paid. And from things that one has read and heard, I think there is a lot of disaffection within society, but still there is no uprising. Also, I do think something that's been effective from the Trump administration has been this economic fury, where they have been seizing the assets, such as the cryptocurrencies, the properties of the Iranian leadership in different countries. I know they have properties actually in London, but across the Middle East, and also, like, for example, in Kuwait, but also their crypto assets that have been now provided by some of the other countries that have been harboring some of their assets, such as and different bank accounts. I think that has been to a degree effective. However, the most important thing is the midterms, and that is, even if President Trump denies that he doesn't care about it, the midterms are a huge issue. The American public has never been happy with forever wars. President Trump was elected sort of as a president of peace. He said that he would keep us out of long engagements such as this sort of engagement, and I think it's not looking good for him, certainly not from a polling perspective, not from a popularity perspective, and the midterms are going to be a crushing time if something isn't sorted out this summer, and the Iranians know that. The only last but not least is, because of that financial pressure, hopefully they're feeling the time crunch, because like I said, they don't care about their own people.
Richard.
So I'm here, I think, to give a contrary point of view, and I will very much do that here.
Okay.
Donald Trump, I could read the list, but it would take the rest of the show, the 37 times he has said that we're very close to a peace deal. I don't think anybody outside of maybe the people in the White House believe that, and that's not even crystal clear that Trump believes it. So that's a problem that in the real estate business, maybe he could bluff people, but he can't do it here. Second, I think that he was sold a bill of goods by Bibi Netanyahu, who, recall, had a meeting in the White House with his head of Mossad that said, to Hillary's point, there will be an uprising, the regime will be brought down, people will take to the streets and take over the government. And what they didn't do was kind of the tabletop exercises, the across all the agency communicating that any administration going into a war would do. And therefore, they didn't think through the implications of the Strait of Hormuz. And how do we know that? We know because the Secretary of Energy wasn't even brought in until several days after this war started. We know that the Secretary of Agriculture, remember, fertilizer prices are now through the roof, wasn't brought in. And farmers are not happy. That's going to cost the Republicans seats in the U.S. House and Senate. So this is a miserable problem, and I say this not with any glee as a Democrat. This is baked in. We are now halfway through June almost, and the notion that somehow, if this got resolved tomorrow, there's still mines in the Strait of Hormuz, there's all these ships that are blocked up, and the notion that we're somehow, as Trump has been forecasting now for months, oh, the price of oil is going to come straight down. That's nonsense. We know the price of oil goes up like a rocket and drops like a feather, and we will experience that. And it's dreaming. And again, the rules of economics will take hold here. And I think, again, this is something that the Republicans know and can't do anything about because they're so beholden to Trump. Trump himself, I think, believes his own talk. And I think we're kind of saddled with a war that will not have a very good outcome. My personal view is if they get a deal as good as the Obama nuclear deal from 2015, they'll be lucky, because I think now the Iranian regime is tougher than the one that was wiped out. They took action that I think the prior regime was reluctant to take against other countries in the region and even U.S. forces. And I think their stranglehold over the Strait of Hormuz is something they didn't quite know they could pull off. And now they know with some drones and so forth, they can.
Yeah. Let's talk to London about this. Benjamin, your thoughts about the mess that I would say President Trump has got himself into to some extent. I think the ambition was honourable. I do maintain that. I think this administration's vision of taking out a nuclear capability, stop funding the terrorist proxies that work on behalf of Iran all around the world, and also capitalise upon the peace between Gaza, between Palestine and Israel, so that they could start to roll out a peaceful and prosperous and safe Middle East. Are we anywhere near that, Ben?
Well, I agree with you that the goal was the right goal, but there was a reason that no US administration had done this before. And as we understand it, Netanyahu had put this plan to previous US Secretaries of State and presidents, and they turned it down for a reason. Now, in recent years, Iran's proxies, like in Gaza with Hamas and Hezbollah in Lebanon and Assad falling in Syria, has really made Israel safer and had significantly weakened Iran. They were in a much worse position than they had been before the October 7th attacks. So there was a sort of reason to think that you can take out, the centre of the octopus now that so many of its tentacles are weakened, if not eradicated. But what they've done, what Trump's approach has done with lacking a strategy, is that actually it's reinforced a lot of its power, because it's proven that it can have that massive effect on the global economy from the Strait of Hormuz. It's estimated that $2 to $3 trillion of economic movement has been knocked off since this started, which is significant. Almost $1 trillion of that said to be affecting the US. And so I think your guest, Lisa Aftari, she said this a few times, and it's exactly right. For the Iranian regime, survival is victory. And I think that's where Trump's negotiation falls down, because any of these ideas that there'll be an uprising or that they've damaged the people of Iran, the regime doesn't care about that. And that's why he can't negotiate in good faith, and why I think this is going to drag on for much longer.
Just 20 seconds, Claire. What does Trump do now? Does he just bomb the living daylights out of Iran, even if it affects the civilians?
I don't think he will, from a humanity exercise. Remember, there was 3 points: to remove and disable any nuclear arms, to overthrow the theocracy that was there, to open up the Straits of Hormuz. But he didn't. The 4th point was he never had an end game. He never had an exit strategy. That was the problem. Trump is, as Hillary quite rightly said, no one wants a long-term war. They want a war. They want peace. So does Trump. He said he would end the Ukraine war. He hasn't.
Thanks, Claire. Thank you. Right, still to come this evening on The Late Show Live.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. A damp and overcast day for much of the UK. Weather fronts moved in overnight. It does look a little bit drier into tomorrow and even drier into the weekend. But for now, we've got a wet start out there for many of us, and the rain will persist through much of the day, bringing with it a lot of cloud too. So very little way in the way of sunshine to come. It will feel quite humid out there too, as we've got southerly winds. We're in what's known as the warm sector through much of today. So temperatures will be in the mid to high teens, but it will feel quite humid. I think you will notice a difference stepping out there. It will last through the night as well into Friday. Much of the rain does push away to the east throughout this evening, but it's still going to be quite a damp evening for much of Scotland, particularly across more western areas. Quite a lot of cloud around, a bit of a grey end to the day. A bit more in the way of showery rain across parts of Northern Ireland, so it could be a little bit brighter than it has been through much of the day into this evening. A similar story for southwestern areas of the UK. Into the southeast, where we're just closer to that rain, we're more likely to see a bit of a damp end to the day. But the bulk of the rain does push away to the east through much of the night, and in its place we just see some showery rain moving through, so more widely a drier night to come for many of us, but quite a lot of cloud around, and we hold on to that humid feel throughout much of the night. So temperatures not really falling away much overnight, still in the mid-teens for many of us to start the day. Quite close feeling overnight. Here's a weather front pushing into parts of the Republic of Ireland and then into Northern Ireland, pushing into Wales and central areas through lunchtime and into the afternoon, just bringing thicker cloud for a time and a risk of some rain. Showers will affect the far northwest. Elsewhere, probably is going to feel fairly dry. Very limited sunshine, however, but temperatures still climbing a little bit higher to the low 20s in the southeast. Have a good day.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Cates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
Bold. They are under no illusion.
Ray.
Are you a human trafficker?
Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get us on the BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines.
The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it?
From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos.
What I'm going to do now is they are throwing things out the car as we speak.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From court mornings
to warm family brunches,
from football to tennis in the car,
in the kitchen.
GB News Breakfast is there with the stories you need and the conversations that matter.
Anyway, let's talk business.
Well, it has been a historic night in British politics.
It's astonishing, isn't it?
We're here again to start your day just right. GB News Breakfast.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact is Trump made a good start. No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Some people enjoy lazy Sunday mornings, but not me.
What's the truth of the matter? So that's a very live question. Would you support him if he waters down these plans?
Before the spin sets in,
I'll be getting to the truth.
This is personal.
No soft questions, no easy answers.
It's one thing if the state has rules in this country. It's another thing whether the police and others actually police them.
Setting the agenda and holding those in power to account.
You can't really blame her if the system is set up this way.
You will not want to miss it, trust me. The Camilla Tominey Show, Sundays from 9:30, only on GB News.
Live from Washington, D.C., this is GB News with the stories shaping Britain and America tonight.
We'll see what happens, but we hit them hard yesterday, and we're going to hit them again hard today, in case you miss it, in case you don't turn on your television set.
Yep, after the recent downing of the American Apache helicopter and fire exchanged in response, is a sustainable peace deal in sight, and has the ceasefire ever looked more fragile? Also tonight.
Graceful, but I think it's really hard to manage as well. Really hard to police and control. So I'm not sure what else they could do about it, but I know it is rife and that we're being overly cautious with our phones while we're here,
Met Commissioner Sir Mark Rowley is pushing the Home Secretary to force phone companies to make stolen devices unusable as he seeks to wage a war on phone theft in Britain's capital. I'm going to be talking to a former Scotland Yard detective to ask whether that will make any difference at all. Also this evening.
How do you ask for a drink correctly? Reese, how do you ask for a drink?
That is the brilliant Jo Frost. Super Nanny, Channel 4, of course. Well, new analysis by University College London has said that not outlawing smacking in England and Northern Ireland is what they call a huge missed opportunity and deeply disappointing. Should the state have anything to do with how you choose to discipline your own children? I'm Beth Turner, and this is The Late Show Live. If you're just joining me, where have you been? I'm joined this evening by political commentator Hilary Fordwich in the studio and Democratic strategist Richard Goodstein, and in London, two very familiar faces, integral parts of the GB News family, Claire Muldoon and Benjamin Butterworth. Thank you guys for joining us this evening. So, Britain's biggest police force is pushing the Home Secretary to force phone companies to make stolen devices harder to use. It comes as Met Police Commissioner Sir Mark Rowley continues a crusade to make the handsets less desirable to steal, because basically they'll be of no use. Today the force is announcing it started sharing data with Apple to more closely track whether stolen handsets get reconnected to a phone network after they're taken. GB News' Home and Security Editor Mark White was given exclusive access to the Met's high-speed interceptor teams as they joined the fight against mobile phone thieves. Have a watch.
We're out with one of the Met's most elite units. These interceptors are now being used in the battle against phone thieves. A motorbike has just triggered their automatic number plate recognition cameras, suggesting a possible cloned plate.
There's a good chance it's probably a stolen bike, unlikely to stop, so get more units, box it properly.
Right, so you think towards Lewisham way, do you?
Stolen bikes are used regularly by those involved in street-level phone robberies. They've caught up with the bike and are preparing to stop it.
Have you had your plate copied or something before? You've been stopped recently?
It turns out he's actually the victim of a cloned plate. A criminal is likely driving around on a stolen bike using a copy of this man's reg number.
We just gave him some advice to make his bike a little bit more distinctive to him.
Yeah.
Like I say, said he was an Arsenal fan. If you can get an Arsenal sticker or something, stick it on the back of his back box, then
yeah.
If it's a case of us getting behind it and then saying, oh, it's got an Arsenal badge on it, it would save us even stopping him. I've got a right-hand side indication.
In South London, the interceptors are about to pull over the car in front to check the 4 young occupants.
You got a driving licence at all?
All 4 are on the criminal database for previous offences. The car was allegedly involved in a violent incident in recent days. Out of an abundance of caution, as they're checking the 4 people inside this vehicle, they remain handcuffed to allow the interceptors to carry out those checks to look for any signs of criminality.
I've got an orange KTM saying stop.
The bike, which has failed to stop, narrowly missed a pedestrian as it sped down the main road. The interceptors catch up with it at a set of traffic lights. The rider is unceremoniously dragged from his bike and detained. Across the capital, the interceptor teams, highly skilled vehicle pursuit officers, are responding to increasing levels of criminality linked to the trade in stolen phones.
Just want to close a bit of distance.
Scotland Yard has significantly stepped up operations against those involved in an increasingly lucrative trade in stolen devices.
These devices have gone, in years gone by, from a couple of £100 to well over £1,000. The economy of scale is there for criminals. They see the opportunity. For us, we've had to respond to that quite quickly, and in London we've adapted very quickly to the issue. I mean, 2024 we saw 80,000 phones stolen here in London, and then so far this year, I'm pleased to say, in Westminster we're seeing a 55% reduction in week on week of phones being stolen now compared to the same weeks last year.
In the Met's latest enforcement operation, dozens of addresses have been raided and phone theft suspects arrested. 3,500 e-bikes and scooters have been seized in London since January. Now Apple has also agreed a partnership with police to share more data to help track and identify where stolen mobiles reappear in circulation. Mark White, GB News.
Thank you, Mark White. We were all gripped to here in the studio to see that. Yes. And can I just say how wonderful it is to see coppers doing a good job. We don't see enough of that. So well done, Mark, and well done all those police officers in that package. Let's talk now to former Metropolitan Police Detective Peter Blexley. Now, Peter, I bet that made you miss being a police officer a little bit, didn't it? When you see them being empowered to do their jobs, racing around the streets of London, actually catching the bad guys. We don't see enough of that, do we? Just reflect on that for a minute.
Oh, I wish I was half my age, half my weight, and I had a warrant card back. It's exactly the kind of police work I thoroughly enjoyed being a part of. And it's terrific to see not only the work being done, but that it's delivering results. So many crime commentators like myself for a very long time have been saying the police have got to be proactive to arresting people, charging them, getting them in front of the courts.
When we see this about mobile phones, Peter, what they're talking about is not just nicking one phone and being able to... They're talking about the organised phone robberies. I mean, we saw some footage there with some of those bedrooms with hundreds, potentially thousands of phones in the rooms. And is the Met Commissioner right when he says, is Mark Rowley right when he says that actually if these phones were unusable, that trade would just stop overnight?
Yes, and that's what he's really aiming for from the telephone manufacturers, that when a device is stolen, when it's then reported to the manufacturers as being stolen, that there's in effect a kill switch, so the device can be killed and it then becomes utterly unusable ever again. That's their ultimate goal. That's what they really want. And credit to Mark Rowley, he's been very forthright and very vocal on this subject, and it does look very much so like he's making progress.
It does. I wonder how that would work. Maybe neither you nor I are experts on the technology of these things to know how that would work, because there's also a very big market, in a legal market, in selling refurbished phones. You know, people who can't necessarily afford the latest model. My kids have never had a brand new phone. I've always gone onto websites where you get refurbished ones, because frankly they shouldn't be walking around with a phone in the pocket that costs that much. I wonder if it would affect that.
Quite possibly, and there would have to be safeguards, because if somebody was being vindictive, for example, and they rang up and reported somebody else's phone as being stolen. But all these things are overcomeable in 2026 through passwords and other technological advances. So I'm sure it is going to come down the line. We are going to have it. And it'll be great because it will dramatically reduce the amount of thefts. But, of course, my concern is the criminals will simply switch their criminal intent to some other form of crime. It's not like they're all going to go straight all of a sudden, but this is a massive problem, and credit where it's due, the Met has really been applying itself to this.
Yeah, hasn't it? I can't have you here, Peter, without getting a little bit from you on your thoughts on what's happened in Belfast this week with that atrocious, very visual murder of Stephen Ogilvie, and then the response or the reaction from the people in Belfast, particularly the rioters causing disruption. What have your observations been and what you've seen?
Well, somebody has been charged with a crime, so of course, as a responsible broadcaster, I'm not going to go anywhere near that. But the fallout from it, the rioting, the burning of houses and cars and so much more is, of course, idiotic, illegal and plainly wrong. But we have a far greater problem here at play, and that is that our politicians in the UK, the overwhelming majority of them, and I'm talking about Keir Starmer, Hilary Benn yesterday, and many, many others, simply will not accept the scale of people's concern about illegal migration into the UK. I was in Liverpool today and last night, and there was a protest there, which I then went and observed for a while and spoke to many, many people. And the concerns that they have, it was outside a migrant hotel, that these people have got, with huge numbers of people that we have no idea what their background are, no idea what their intentions are. They've come to this country. They are quite literally living rent, food, clothes free, having contributed nothing to this nation. And of course, so many of these people have come to the UK and committed very serious crimes, including murder. Rest in peace, Rhiannon White. People are understandably angry, concerned and frightened, and yet the politicians just come out with the platitudes, with the obfuscation, with the denying there's any kind of problem. And it's no surprise to me that unfortunately we've had all these horrible scenes in Belfast.
Yeah. And Peter, can I just say, I'm glad you're not half your age, because the gain to the police force would be a loss to GB News and our viewers who all love you. So thank you so much for joining us. Peter Blexley, their former police detective. Right, let's get the thought of my panels on this. You had a mobile phone stolen, Hilary?
I've never had one stolen, but I've seen many a clip of in London them driving by when people are on their phone, and I've seen the warnings of people not to be on their phones, which I think obviously is a ghastly situation. But I do think it would be good to have a way to be able to shut them down immediately, but I don't know how that actually works. Once it's gone, you can't report anything unless you can actually just go somewhere to report your number, because of course you don't have a phone to be able to connect with anyone. But I did see, we're seeing the police there. I think it is wonderful that they're actually clamping down on crime. The only way to stop all of these terrible sort of situations is to have them fear what's going to happen to them, which they don't if they can do it with impunity.
Yeah. At the risk of offending four of us, I'm going to go to Benjamin Butterworth, who might be the youngest person on the panel who might know how the technology would work. Benjamin, how would you be able to have a kill switch in a phone that you could turn off? I'm finding it quite hard to picture what that would work like, especially if you want to sell on your phone.
Yeah, I did actually try and look this up to understand it, and I think it's sort of an activation lock is the phrase that's used to be able to turn a phone off, and apparently that technology already exists. But I'm sure it would help to reduce the incentive for people to steal phones, because they can't sell them as a complete package if it does have a kill switch. But I'm sceptical about the extent to which that would help, because actually the parts such as the motherboard, the screen, the battery are themselves worth a reasonable amount of money, hundreds of pounds if it's a good phone. And so I think that would still be in large part worth people stealing it and selling it on, especially if they sell it to other countries. And also if they put these phones in other countries, maybe the kill switch doesn't work once it's in another domain if it's something that's happening in the UK. And we know that many of these are shipped quickly out of the UK. I think there was a Daily Mail investigation last year that found that 40,000 of the 70,000 phones in London last year were through a crime and shipped off to China. So, you know, it's organised crime behind a lot of this. So there's a real scale to it.
Yeah.
Go on.
I was just going to say, I was going to actually ask Richard, the images we've seen there of guys on e-bikes just snatching the phone out of people's hands, is that a thing here in America? It's not, is it?
It's not
really
yet.
a thing here.
I mean, look, there are two separate issues. One is having these e-bikes and scooters and frankly, like motorcycles. Let's not kid ourselves. That's what we're talking about. People driving them on sidewalks. I bet I probably am on the sidewalks of DC more than the two of you.
Yeah.
And I fear, and I'm afraid that one of these days I'm going to get clipped by somebody. These are not experts, you know. And yet we don't see those images that you just showed, which are frankly nauseating, of these phones being nicked. I just don't know why. I think they haven't kind of figured out that you know, it's just as easy here to do it. I mean, you go anywhere and you'll see those phones. You know, they're ubiquitous. And I don't really think the police are doing anything. I just think somehow or other it hasn't quite caught on.
I wonder though whether that's because you haven't got the same, Claire, whether America doesn't have the same sort of little organised crime gangs, the Albanians that Benjamin was mentioning earlier. That's why they're nicking these phones to order, because they are very well organised. I don't think they have that same sort of problem here in America. They have a lot of crime, but I don't think they have that, Claire.
I don't think they do, but you know, Benjamin was speaking a different language there to me when he was talking about motherboards, etc., etc. But I'll tell you, if you see, I think we've all done this. If a child or a friend has broken their phone or screen's cracked and it's irreparable, someone's always got a spare phone. It's really difficult actually to transfer it onto the other person that needs it. So I don't know how these criminals actually manifest, you know, to get the phone back up. Morgan McSweeney, of course, Chief of Staff at Number 10, X, he famously had his phone stolen, as did GBNews Matthew Stadlin. He had his phone actually taken off him by a line bike biker passing him. Matthew, unfortunately, seemed to think that was a major crime. I sort of disagreed, and I think my face said that too. However, I'm in full agreement with Mark Rowley on this. I think we need to be able to stop the phones as opposed to stop the gangs and stop the boats. And one way we might be able to do it with the technology that we have, with all of the AI and all of the clever bots in Silicon Valley and all around, why don't we make the phones just cheaper? Why do we have to have? I mean, I know they are computers. I know they're very, very clever at what they do, but surely we can make them cheaper. What with having children in Africa mine for the batteries and stuff like that. So make them cheaper and make them null and void once they're stolen.
Why aren't they cheaper, Richard Goodstein?
I don't represent any tech companies. I happen to have a client who's in the tech sector, so I hear what they have to say. And I think it's a racket. Look, I think it is a racket. That there's an addiction, frankly, that has been developed. I mean, you got to tip your hat to Apple. It's not easy to kind of create an addiction. If you go anywhere on any subway, you name it, and every single person is glued to their phone. Did Steve Jobs have that vision 30 years ago? I don't know, but somebody did, and it's worked. And I think that's the problem, because why is the price of drugs higher than it could otherwise be? Because again, the demand is what it is, and people are prepared to pay and forego other things of life that cost $1,000 because they need that newest phone.
Absolutely. Go on, Hillary.
No, I was going to say, I think one of the differences in society is maybe, yes, we don't have the kind of, as you referred to, the Albanian gangs here, but another thing is, don't forget, the British generally tend to walk a lot more, far more out in public on their phones, whereas in America, I mean, obviously people do walk around DC, but it's a driving society. People are in their cars. There aren't as many people. I mean, Americans will drive, if they're in the same strip mall, they'll drive to the other end of the strip mall. So I think that's a big difference difference also, whereas they're on the streets, and also you have more motorcycles, more mopeds, there's a prevalence of those. So I think it's the confluence of that that is one of the factors numerically.
And you've just got so many more visible police officers. I mean, I know this is Washington and therefore there's always a high security risk, but there is not a day that goes by when I don't see multiple police cars at any junction. You can pretty much within the day, hourly, you will see a police car in this city.
And crime is down. I mean, look, the fact of the matter is, this is not Trump, this is not Biden. I mean, crime rates are coming down. There's any number of analyses as to why that is, but it is, which is all to the good. Whether it's more policing, more people like literally out in the community, so that criminals know they're going to have to contend with them. This is not like a freebie to nick a phone.
Yeah, go on, Benjamin.
I was just going to say, I had my phone stolen at the threat of a knife a couple of years ago on the South Bank. And it was 3 teenage boys that strangled me and then eventually got the phone out of my hand. And when I reported it, I made a fuss about it, and actually GBNews made a fuss out of it as well, which I think was the only reason the Metropolitan Police properly investigated it. But what they said, relating to your point, was they said, we have undercover police officers on the South Bank, and that's why that's what we do. About 2 weeks later, my flatmate, who was also a regular on this programme at the time, my flatmate, Robert Midgley, he worked for Foreign Secretary Liz Truss at the time and was carrying a bag with government documents in it. He had his bag stolen in exactly the same spot, and they didn't even bother to investigate that because he couldn't publicise it. So first of all, the police don't make an attempt in so many cases, and therefore they get away with it. And secondly, this stuff of undercover or plainclothes police officers is just a nonsense. You need the visibility because then people are scared to even think of doing it.
As a deterrent.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you need a deterrent.
And I think there is a younger generation that are incredibly attuned to this idea that their phone could get nicked out of their hands. I'll walk down the street with my girls and I'm looking at the map or something and they think I'm crazy.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Like, put it away. And I did it here in Washington, D.C. I said, girls, look, you can look at your phone here. No one's going to come and nick it out of your hands. This is the land of the free.
Yeah.
Right, gbnews.com/your say. Keep your messages coming, won't you, this evening on everything that we are talking about. But first of all, is it time to ban the balaclava? Nottingham is considering restricting the face covering in an effort to tackle masked crime, following a rise in complaints about young people wearing them while riding the bikes and scooters we've just been talking about. Under the proposal, anyone caught wearing the item in the area could face prosecution and fines. Should we ban balaclavas, Claire?
Yes, we should. Absolutely, we should. We should also ban hoodies in areas like shopping centres because they also cover faces.
Ban hoodies?
Ban hoodies with hoods up.
Wear a sweatshirt with a hood. Do you mean? Oh, you mean? But you can't ban people from putting their hood up, surely.
Yes, you can. Yeah, I will. I would if I was in charge. Ban balaclavas. Ban scarves on faces. Ban masks.
Oh yeah.
And ban hoodies. Of course we should.
But
we
then
need to have visibility.
You'd have to ban burqas as well then, Claire. Then we're getting into all sorts of territory, aren't we?
Well, that's fine by me. Jack Straw first mooted it when he was Foreign Secretary. And I think for safety, for security reasons, I would agree with that. Don't forget Charlie Hebdo.
Wow, Benjamin.
Well, I mean, I suppose I would turn the question on its head and say, what would be the reason that you need to wear a balaclava? You know,
ask kneecap.
Maybe, maybe kneecap. Maybe in private, some people choose this outfit, but I can't see any reason why you need to go out and about in life with a balaclava on.
Because you're going to commit a crime, Benjamin. That's why you don't want to be caught with a camera. Because we're living in such a horrible state now and that they can see and hear everything.
If you made balaclavas illegal, would that mean that the burglar coming at your front door at 3 a.m. Would stop wearing a balaclava? Well, no. So how effective would a ban actually be? Because people wearing these are already doing criminal acts in those cases. But the idea that you could ban it in a shopping centre, or I think it already is banned in banks, actually, but I think that probably makes some sense. But then, you know, you kind of have to factor in that these people may well be doing criminal behaviour, and so are they going to care that there's an additional law they're breaking, and therefore what's the point? And so I think, you know, I think that would be the real question. The idea of banning hoodies, I think, is slightly ridiculous and impossible.
Are you saying I've got ridiculous ideas, Benjamin?
Possibly, yes.
You know, I don't need any excuse to go back to the pandemic, as you know, but one of the things that I used to rage about at the time was the normalising of covering up faces. I could not believe how normal it became to walk around with your face covered up. Well, guess what? Fast forward 6 years, we've got a younger generation who've gone brilliant. I don't like talking to people anyway. I can't really communicate with anyone anyway. Now I can just hide behind a face covering. I never have to grow up and mature and have conversations. And if I want to go and nick something from shoplifting, which I can pretty much do because it's pretty much legal, I can just wear a mask over my face and nobody will tell me to take it off.
Actually,
Richard, go on, Hillary, go on.
balaclavas don't exist in America, not by name. Of course, they're from the Battle of Balaclava. In America, they're called bank robber masks, but we don't have any such bans here, and I can't even imagine that.
I haven't seen them in the same way that we see them on the streets of London. Routinely, gangs of young men are getting on and off these e-bikes. They've got their faces covered up. They are so intimidating, and you don't seem to have the same preoccupation with face coverings here, Richard.
Yeah, I don't feel like I have standing as the one, no disrespect, pure American on this, but yes, I think if there was that kind of, something would be done about it if what you just described were prevalent in the US. I mean, the population would just not sit well. Democrats, Republicans, it would cross party lines. It would just be unacceptable because of the threat and the fear and the image. It's just kind of inconsistent. I think, I discriminate between that and people's reaction to COVID, but I do think that it's something that I can't really describe. What is it about the UK system versus the US that would make it something that would be intolerable here? I just have this feeling it would be.
You see, when I think about the fact that we normalised masks, it wasn't done in law. We got dangerously close to making it law that you had to wear a stupid mask. But it was done by social judgment. It was the contagion of looking at another person going, oh, they're not covering up their face. How do we re-engineer that? Claire, how do we therefore make it socially unacceptable to wear a covering on your face? I don't see how we do that.
Well, I get that, but you see people in London buses still wearing masks, and I'm like, what are you doing? But remember that just as we were coming out of lockdown, if we were, I do take public transport, but if someone coughed, it gave you the ick, as Jen said would say. It kind of like, oh, where is your mask? But now you really don't need it. Just open the windows on the buses, to go about your business and just make yourself healthy, because we know that the masks don't stop transference of any disease. And indeed, if you were to ask a surgeon, even in a theatre, the efficacy of a mask is something less than 3 minutes. So even the fact that we had to wear them was just preposterous.
You see, we need to make it socially unacceptable for young men to be driving around with the faces covered up, balaclavas. But are you or I, or are you or me, Ben, going to be the one to say to them, you look ridiculous, take it off? I mean, I might. But then they're very intimidating.
Do you know, it's a good question. I mean, you do see people around London with face masks on, and some of them look like they're wearing it for health reasons. And if you have a weak immune system or something, I can understand why, even on a psychological level, even if it's not that medically effective, those people want to wear it. But I remember, I think last week, I was in an elevator in the tube station, and a load of teenage boys got in. It was about 3:30 p.m. after school, and they all had, or most of them had, face masks on. And I hate to say it, but I felt really uncomfortable.
I bet you did.
Felt unsafe because, as it turned out, by the way, they were all perfectly pleasant and nothing untoward about them. But I was just like, why do all these teenage boys, these sort of 15 or 16-year-olds, have to cover their faces? It's making other people feel unsafe and question why they're behaving like that. And, I'm a healthy young man. If I were 70-year-old or, with a walking stick, something like that, I can see it makes people feel very uncomfortable.
Richard?
I want to bring it back to a point when I just said I'm not sure what discriminates the US from the UK. And this supports my theory that I don't think people wearing masks would go down well. Because ICE, they are wearing masks. They are covering their faces. They are wearing no name tag.
That's for their own protection.
The unmarked vans that they're throwing people into. And I think that's what Americans just find just profoundly objectionable that if you're doing your police don't wear masks in the U.S. and the theory is that somehow or other that because you're ICE, people come after you. No, you're not doing anything worse as a member of ICE than you are as a policeman cracking down on bad guys, but somehow or other police, it would be unthinkable to have a police force where everybody's wearing a face mask. And yet with ICE, that's one of the reasons that Democrats oppose this bill that Trump signed today for $70 billion for ICE and the border protection, is because it feels like a police state that we've now kind of ingrained. And I think that's among the reasons why, frankly, what he's doing on immigration is now unpopular.
The idea of a police state, though, is that would be the accusation. if this government, if the British government said we're going to literally ban a face covering, that's what we've heard every time ban the burqa comes up. They say, how can a government legislate against you wearing a piece of cloth over your face if you choose to do so? And you look at it in that basic level, it does sound ridiculous. But I do wonder, as per Ben's anecdote there about being in the lift, Claire, whether this should be about schools. Maybe it should be that the schools need to be empowered to say anybody that turns up with a mask in your bag, we're having them. You're just having to hand it over. You're not leaving the premises in them. You're not owning them. I don't know how they could do that, but somehow empower the teachers to make sure these kids don't have them.
Bev, we should be empowering parents to make sure the kids aren't going out the house with them, for heaven's sake.
Yeah.
We can't keep passing the buck of responsibility onto schools, you know? We want them to take away their phones at school. We don't want them in the phones at schools. We've got schools in Wales with metal detectors at the entrance. You know, come on, it's all wrapped up. We need to just stop the drugs, stop the knives, stop the balaclavas and mask wearing. And I'll tell you where it all starts, by being able to corporally punish your children. That's where it starts, and that gives power to parents.
And that's going to be our next debate, actually, in just a moment, what parents can do. You know, there will be some parents, I've no doubt about it, that will want their child to go out, their teenage boy to go out in a mask because they know he's going to commit crime. Well, they think they can't do anything about it, and they don't want him to get caught. I can guarantee it. Let's have a quick look at some of the other main news headlines here in America. Bill Gates told a congressional committee today that he'd never had a personal relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. He said he cut ties with Jeff Epstein when he couldn't deliver on fundraising for the tech billionaire's so-called philanthropic efforts. Gates appeared voluntarily in Washington at a closed-door hearing with the House Oversight Committee looking into Epstein. Also reportedly named other powerful people that Jeffrey Epstein approached for fundraising. In unwelcome news for the president, inflation in the US has increased at the fastest pace in 3 years. Surging oil prices amid the fragile ceasefire with Iran have weighed heavily on global energy markets. Energy prices rose by 3.9% in May, and Americans are feeling the pressure at the pumps, with many speculating it could have a bad effect on the president's results in the midterms. In what is a staggering rise, petrol prices are now more than 40% higher than they were this time last year. And finally, on Tuesday, a teenager in Texas was sentenced to 35 years after a stabbing at a high school athletics event. The trial of Carmelo Anthony has polarized America. The death of white boy Austin Metcalf in April 2025 drew national attention, sparking a debate about self-defense and school safety. The lads were both 17 at the time of the incident. Still to come this evening on The Late Show Live.
How do you ask for a drink correctly? Reese, how do you ask for a drink?
Super Nanny's face in that clip. Channel 4's Joe Frost there. Well, new analysis by University College London has said that not outlawing smacking of your children in England and Northern Ireland was a huge missed opportunity and deeply disappointing. Typical academics. Should the state have anything to do with how you discipline your kids? We'll talk about that after your weather.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. A damp and overcast day for much of the UK. Weather fronts moved in overnight. It does look a little bit drier into tomorrow and even drier into the weekend. But for now, we've got a wet start out there for many of us, and the rain will persist through much of the day, bringing with it a lot of cloud too. So very little way in the way of sunshine to come. It will feel quite humid out there too, as we've got southerly winds. We're in what's known as the warm sector through much of today. So temperatures will be in the mid to high teens, but it will feel quite humid. I think you will notice a difference stepping out there. It will last through the night as well into Friday. Much of the rain does push away to the east throughout this evening, but it's still going to be quite a damp evening for much of Scotland, particularly across more western areas. Quite a lot of cloud around, a bit of a grey end to the day. A bit more in the way of showery rain across parts of Northern Ireland, so it could be a little bit brighter than it has been through much of the day into this evening. A similar story for southwestern areas of the UK. Into the southeast, where we're just closer to that rain, we're more likely to see a bit of a damp end to the day. But the bulk of the rain does push away to the east through much of the night, and in its place we just see some showery rain moving through, so more widely a drier night to come for many of us, but quite a lot of cloud around, and we hold on to that humid feel throughout much of the night. So temperatures not really falling away much overnight, still in the mid-teens for many of us to start the day. Quite close feeling overnight. Here's a weather front pushing into parts of the Republic of Ireland and then into Northern Ireland, pushing into Wales and central areas through lunchtime and into the afternoon, just bringing thicker cloud for a time and a risk of some rain. Showers will affect the far northwest. Elsewhere, probably is going to feel fairly dry. Very limited sunshine, however, but temperatures still climbing a little bit higher to the low 20s in the southeast. Have a good day.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Right, let's get into this debate. Should smacking children be banned in England? New research from the University College London has found that physical punishment is associated with poorer educational outcomes and a greater likelihood of behavioural problems later in childhood. Apparently, the study found that children in England who experienced physical punishment at the ages of 3, 5 and 7 were less likely to achieve 5 GCSE passes, including maths and English, than those who had not been subjected to such treatment. I'd really like to know the details of that research, though. Is it time for England to do the same as in Wales, I believe, isn't it? I think it's banned in Wales, isn't it? You can't smack your kids in Wales. Have I got that right, Claire? Do you know?
I don't know, but you can't smack your kids in Scotland. I know that for a fact.
Oh, with Scotland, maybe, okay. Yeah. Well, it's. I think Scotland and Wales are aligned, and I think England isn't on this. But go on, Claire, kick us off. Your thoughts on this?
Right. Okay, I've got a myriad of thoughts on this because I'm an experienced smacker, for want of a better word. I disciplined my children when they were growing up. And we look to, the thing we have to do is cast our minds back to all the studies that have been done in Sweden. Sweden put a national ban in 1979 on any corporal discipline on your child. And the results are pretty clear. There was a book written by the chap called, he was a psychiatrist, and the children that took power. And then there was another report by the Christian Institute putting families first in 2004. And these two encyclicals really came out with exactly the same evidence. It didn't do anything to negate child abuse, because the child abuse mortality rate in Sweden was very low anyway. All it did was disempower the parents and put more power to the children. And what we've found is that children are running the roost. They're telling their parents what they're going to watch on TV. They're telling their parents what time they're going to go to bed. They're telling their parents what they're going to have for supper. They're telling their parents what they're going to do. And that research that you just read out there about the children having less than 5 GCSEs, I mean, that is just absolute waffle. It really is. I'm not condoning. So I'm not. Well, mine left with 12 GCSEs and like 3 A levels, and all have got degrees. So come on. Where does that add up to? And I was a single mother, still am, and bringing them up. Yeah. But what the major point for me on this is, if you have a child, you're the parent, It's up to you to parent your child, and that covers a whole umbrella of discipline. And if we don't discipline the kids, we've got feral kids running around, and we've got issues in society, and we've got them now.
You've got 3 children, yes. Hilary, grown-up, semi-grown-up children.
Yep.
I imagine you ran quite a tight ship as well.
How do you know?
I can tell.
Yes.
Did you ever smack your kids?
I'm like Claire, was a single mother. I never laid a finger on my children, but I will say I was sort of like a Nazi mother. I was the mother and the father, and I was very, very strict. And actually, there was a saying in the United States when Giuliani became the governor, the mayor of New York, and they called it the broken glass concept, which is you put your foot down on all the little things and then the big things take care of themselves. And they started arresting people that were jumping the turnstiles to come into New York, and people that were trying to squeegee people's windshields and try to get money. It's all the little things. It was manners at the dinner table. It was sitting up straight. It was doing all the things properly and not using expletives and all the little things. And I was so strict on all the little things. My children did not dare do anything naughty. And to this day, they were all very well behaved. They did well at school and they're very successful, but they had structure. And I know a lot of people who say, many actually, particularly men, but many men go into the military because they want structure. I think as human beings, we need to know where our boundaries are. But I do think, and to Claire's point, I agree with her, this is in the home. It's up to the parents. I'm not saying that the way I parented was perfect. My children, of course, the proof is in the pudding, turned out wonderfully well, but it is up to the parents. I think it's government overreach to say what you could and could not do. Now, last but not least, when I was at school in England, there still was caning. You could be sent to the headmaster, you could be sent to a certain teacher, and there was caning in the schools.
Go on, Richard.
Yeah. You know, there's that phrase, hurt people, hurt people. And that's not a phrase that just kind of is made up out of whole cloth. Okay? Look, the fact of the matter is, Claire, you're conflating discipline with hitting a kid. Okay?
I'm not.
Think
I'm
about
not
all the
conflating
parents,
it at all.
Like Hillary sitting right here, who was came up with model children and never laid a hand on them. So I'm just saying that I think you can dismiss the notion that kids who are hit themselves hit, and that becomes kind of a process that honestly you really wouldn't want to continue, because they think that's the way to solve problems, to get their point across, to make their will held. And I just think that's unhealthy, as opposed to reasoning or as opposed to imposing limits in any number of ways that a parent can do short of laying a hand on a kid.
Well, what you can't do is reason with a child.
Yeah, I'm interested in that. So, because it's I think the word that jumped out there for me, Claire, was the same as you, was reason with them.
Well, that's what I was just about to say. You can't reason with a toddler.
And I think there's been too much reasoning with the younger generation. That's the problem. Is we've tried to impose a sort of intellectual maturity on children that they frankly just don't have, and you see it in the animal kingdom, where the gorilla or the mummy gorilla would just give them a little whack and they've understood it. Or you see it with cats, you see it with animals, right? Now, I think I think there can be some merit to that type of discipline within the home. I think we have to draw a really, really clear distinction between
beating. I'm not talking about beating children. I'm not talking about beating young adults. I'm not talking about pinning them up against the wall. Yes, exactly. A grab of the hand. What are you doing? Don't be silly. And when the 4 of them all got together, because they were all under the age of 6, I mean, it was quite, manic at times, because they were very structured, they had manners, but, they knew when to behave, and they knew that they could be taken anywhere. But mind you, I'll draw the line at weddings. I don't think children should be at weddings either. I don't really like children that much, as you can tell, apart from my own. But
you got 4 of them.
I know. I love them. I love them completely. But also what we really need to realise is that children aren't as fragile as we think. We need to give them a bit of ownership on this as well. And we need to teach parents that, don't leave a mark on them. And obviously it's not the best practice to smack. I'm not advocating a beating. I'm not advocating massive amounts of corporal punishment. I'm not. But I'll tell you, if one of them answers back or has a side-eye look, they got it.
Richard, were you smacked growing up?
No.
And so you nor your wife have ever smacked your child?
I can't tell you how many times I felt like strangling him, but I resisted, and I'm glad I did. My wife happened to have been a clinical psychologist, so she was rather strong. And I will say, among the reasons she's not my wife anymore, is that she was absolutely unwilling to set limits and boundaries, and it killed me because I thought we actually did our son a grave disservice in that regard.
You see, if you've been married to someone like Claire who's whacking him every 5 minutes, it'll be fine.
Perhaps so. He turned out okay.
Listen, Richard, you wouldn't be, you'd be bald for me slapping your head.
Well, thanks. I got there without the smacking, but thank you so much.
Benjamin, let me ask you about this, Benjamin, because you've said your childhood wasn't straightforward. It was tricky, obviously, at times. And when you listen to this, do you bring a different sort of perspective to it?
Yeah. Sorry, I need some water. So first of all, I'd say the statistic about people that were smacked getting worse GCSE results, I think might be an example of causation not being correlation. I wonder whether there's a class element to that people from poorer households might be more likely to still use smacking, and that's why they get worse outcomes in education. So I don't know that it's related. It seems unlikely. But I was smacked as a child. I would say I was hit far harder than the legal limits would be. My dad actually is a convicted killer, and so that gives you some insight into the level of violence.
Wow.
But the problem with this is that when you are the child in that home, you don't have the agency or the understanding in order to make the judgment that the way you're being hit is too great. And so that's one of the reasons why I think it should be point blank illegal, because as a child, how was I to know where the boundary was or to be able to access somebody that could enforce that boundary? And so I think it should be illegal on that ground. The other thing I'd say is that it might get immediate obedience from the child, but I think it breaks down trust. And I would say that from my personal experience as well, that if the lesson is that in order to get your own way, you have to use force, then you're going to push that child away emotionally, and you're also going to set a negative precedent for how they think they should behave as they grow up. And I think those are massive problems.
I think there's also a difference in...
Can I just... Sorry, sorry, Claire. I want to come back to you, but look, Benjamin, can I just ask you, if it had been illegal, though, would your dad have still smacked you? That was my point.
So he would, but my point, I assume he would anyway, because he did. He was a drug dealer and a killer and everything else. So I'm not sure he was going to stop smacking his kid at home. But the difference would be that as a child, and you go to school, and the school can say at primary school, whatever, that it's not okay for mummy or daddy or whoever to smack you. Well, then that child has a very clear understanding, and they're more likely to tell the school teacher or other figures of authority they see about what's happening. Whereas I don't think the grey area is very useful for a child, because then it allows parents to abuse it without them knowing that they can say something, and I think that's the problem. And then the other thing I just point out...
Yeah, but that terrifies me. No, because that terrifies me, because parents like Claire, who can judiciously dish out a bit of physical discipline, they're going to get wrapped up to a knock on the door from social services because they've had that power taken away, and then they end up having no boundaries, like Richard's ex-missus. Go on, Ben, last word.
Well, I mean, boundaries are not, can be set by many things. It doesn't have to involve force. I would just say you opened with a video of Jo Frost's Super Nanny. Jo Frost is completely against smacking and has campaigned for it to be made illegal. So, I would take, I'm not a parent, evidently, I would take Super Nanny's view all the time.
Yeah. OK, right, thank you, guys. Shall we have a look at the front page of tomorrow's newspapers? Let's have a look at the Daily Mirror here. Yes, we Kansas. Get used to it. It says, here we go. The World Cup is around the corner. We think it's... this is terrible that I don't know this, but I think it starts tomorrow. It can't be. It's the opening ceremony tomorrow.
England isn't playing tomorrow.
But is it?
All I care about is when England's playing.
Well, I presume, I'm hoping that one of the team of thousands in London will currently be Googling it for me. Is the opening ceremony tomorrow with the first game on Friday?
So I'm just looking at the schedule now. Mexico plays South Africa. I believe
the first game tomorrow. We didn't need a team of thousands.
3 p.m. Eastern. South Korea plays Czechia. tomorrow. Those are the two
We
that
play
I
on
see.
England plays on the 17th and the 23rd at 4 p.m. here, 9 p.m. UK time, and then 5 p.m., 10 p.m. on Saturday the 27th.
See, where's Gary Logan when you need her? Well done, we managed between us to work it out.
Richard, can I just say, you said you could get your hands on some really good second-hand tickets. Why don't you go for the 24th of June? Scotland are playing Brazil in Miami. Ben Leo's going with his cameraman. If you can get a ticket, I'll go as well.
That would be great.
That's a date.
I'll count you in.
Is she serious?
I know she is. I can tell.
She's joking.
I'm
She's
sure that's true.
Smack you around the bedroom. You see, if you get together, you'll have a wonderful time.
That's okay. It was delayed all these years. I think I can handle it at this point in my life.
So, how are we going to do? Who's going to win? What are we going to? What if you had to predict like the big events of the next? It actually goes on for weeks. I was going to say it's about 3 or 4 weeks.
I can't actually remember the name of the German mathematician statistician, but he has had a formula where he's predicted the last 3 winners of the World Cup. He's been accurate, and he's predicting the Netherlands is going to win, which will make my Dutch ex-husband really happy. But I just obviously want England.
Okay. Richard, are you invested in this? Do you feel you're going to get invested?
So historically, I get invested towards the end, and actually I've been traveling the last couple World Cups where I came from, either Italy or France or somewhere where everybody, of course, was gathered, in the town square, and you couldn't help. And then I got back to the U.S., usually watching, on my elliptical, whatever the finals were with one of those countries I had just been at. So that gave me a sense of excitement. I hope I get that this time around. Look, I think it's a great event, and again, I think because of the U.S. ability to kind of generate hoopla around something like this, something tells me, look, we've already seen advertised who the presenters, who the entertainers are going to be for halftime of the last show. All these world-class people, Madonna, Shakira, etc. So they're trying to put their all into it, and something tells me that's going to work.
Yeah.
I just can't believe Harry Kane is 33 and still at it, right?
Pretty impressive.
Yeah, I honestly, I can't name
Messi are way older still,
Pickford,
right?
the goalie. How many people can name a goalie of a country? Pickford,
I can't name you anybody in the England team. It's awful. I'm totally detached from it these days.
Dreadful.
But I will get behind the team. I will enjoy it. There's no doubt about it when I actually know what's happening and where it is. And as you say, Claire, Ben Leo has gone with cameraman Ben Davidge and producer Will, and they are going to the World Cup. They're going to be covering it.
That's a liberty.
Yes, I'm here on my own. Don't start. I know.
Gosh.
I know everyone's gone except me, but that's all right. So wearing England badges during the World Cup apparently could be intimidating for migrants.
Oh.
Are you all right, Hillary?
That's the last straw.
According to a watchdog report from the Independent Monitoring Board, officers in an immigration detention facility started wearing England flags on their uniforms last summer after England's women's team won the European Championship. But according to a report, this risked perceptions of bias or intimidation among detained people, especially in the light of recent anti-immigration protests.
So I've got an idea. If they're intimidated, they could leave.
Which flag displays were prominent. Is that what's just pushed you over the edge?
It has. No, really, I'm serious. I'm really serious.
It's shocking.
If you're intimidated, leave the country.
Get used to these kind of stories, because there's going to be several weeks of this. The combination of sport and politics. Benjamin, let me just get a word from you on that. If you're working in a detention centre with illegal immigrants, surely you should be able to wear an England flag.
I mean, I'm always sceptical about where these stories come from because they sound a bit too ridiculous to be true. I've never heard of
this is a report.
The Independent Monitoring Board. I have no idea what that is. But I have to say, I mean, of course it's ridiculous. If you're coming to England, then you're going to see England flags or British flags. I dare say that, if they had the Palestinian flag on their pin badge, they wouldn't be threatened by that, but I certainly would be. So, I'd much rather the England one any day.
Or a rainbow lanyard, even.
A rainbow lanyard.
So, just something that's caught my eye, the NATO conference, the next NATO meeting is actually in Turkey on the 7th to the 8th of July. Why don't they just have it in America? Because they're all going to be there anyway.
Yeah. Well, we will bring you what we can of the World Cup, all the behind-the-scenes stuff. And obviously it's here, it's in America. I mean, it's a great opportunity for us, for GB News, to be here. And Claire, you need to get a ticket. So the tickets that you can buy here, you're saying that we can't buy them in the US. Are they only in the UK? They're only on US websites?
I suspect that they're accessible. I think as we get closer, again, I think there's going to be they're coming to market.
Okay. Right, Claire, get that flight booked. I'll tell Ben Leo you're going to be there. With your popcorn. That's what they eat at football matches here. They've got a lot to learn. Claire, Benjamin, Hilary, Richard, thank you so much. Thank you to everybody at home as well. I'll be back tomorrow night at midnight. That is 7 p.m. here in DC on the eastern coast of America. Sleep well. I'll see you tomorrow.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. A damp and overcast day for much of the UK. Weather fronts moved in overnight. It does look a little bit drier into tomorrow and even drier into the weekend. But for now, we've got a wet start out there for many of us, and the rain will persist through much of the day, bringing with it a lot of cloud too. So very little way in the way of sunshine to come. It will feel quite humid out there too, as we've got southerly winds. We're in what's known as the warm sector through much of today. So temperatures will be in the mid to high teens, but it will feel quite humid. I think you will notice a difference stepping out there. It will last through the night as well into Friday. Much of the rain does push away to the east throughout this evening, but it's still going to be quite a damp evening for much of Scotland, particularly across more western areas. Quite a lot of cloud around, a bit of a grey end to the day. A bit more in the way of showery rain across parts of Northern Ireland, so it could be a little bit brighter than it has been through much of the day into this evening. A similar story for southwestern areas of the UK. Into the southeast, where we're just closer to that rain, we're more likely to see a bit of a damp end to the day. But the bulk of the rain does push away to the east through much of the night, and in its place we just see some showery rain moving through, so more widely a drier night to come for many of us, but quite a lot of cloud around, and we hold on to that humid feel throughout much of the night. So temperatures not really falling away much overnight, still in the mid-teens for many of us to start the day. Quite close feeling overnight. Here's a weather front pushing into parts of the Republic of Ireland and then into Northern Ireland, pushing into Wales and central areas through lunchtime and into the afternoon, just bringing thicker cloud for a time and a risk of some rain. Showers will affect the far northwest. Elsewhere, it probably is going to feel fairly dry. Very limited sunshine, however, but temperatures still climbing a little bit higher to the low 20s in the southeast. Have a good day.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
5 hosts, 5 opinions, 5 fearless debates, 5 unfiltered takes on the day's news.
5 reasons not to be anywhere else on Saturday night.
This is the Saturday 5. You got me. You got me good there. Britain's biggest Saturday night TV show.
It's not a bad brand.
Yeah. Uncensored.
Very, very racist tonight.
On the unpredictable.
What does she say? Can you translate it for us?
And always entertaining.
And how can a country go from being led by William Wallace Saturday nights from 6 p.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You're going to want to stay tuned, trust me. Do you trust what you're being told? Good, because neither do I.
Those are just facts.
I'm Alex Armstrong, and on my show, we'll expose the spin.
Well, I want to answer that, because you didn't let me last time, because you always speak over me.
The broken promises.
To deny that is denying the truth.
And the hypocrisy.
It needs to stop. You think we can allow?
Politics, policy, parliament. Nothing is off limits. No sugarcoating, no fear of offence, just the truth laid bare. Tune in every Saturday and Sunday at 9 p.m. for Alex Armstrong Tonight, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
exist. I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Breaking news, live updates, stories that matter.
From the heart of the GB newsroom to every corner of Britain, with our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
GB News bulletins are there to deliver the latest news that matters to you.
Bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to Free Speech Nation with me, Josh Howard. This is the show where each week we see what's happening in the world of culture, current affairs and politics.
First we'll say, welcome to the UK.
And we're not afraid to use our free speech so that you can use yours.
It's not controversial in the slightest to anyone who hasn't lost their mind.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights at 7 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The GB News audience is different, it's unique, because they see through the nonsense.
We want to debate with each other, we want to listen and maybe learn.
We have a chat. That's what we do. We try and have a chat.
They'll watch my programme while they're eating their tea, they'll watch breakfast while they're busy getting their kids ready for school.
We want to hear what matters to you, what is news for you.
And what's brought you out here today?
What are the biggest issues affecting this particular area?
The audience are the best thing about GB News.
Their friends, their family. They're people who need to have their voices heard.
They're passionate about the channel, they're passionate about what they believe in.
The one thing about GB News is you get a chance to speak.
Talk to me about why so many people have gathered here today.
Do you want to say something back in return? The GB News audience is what makes GB News special.
It's incredible to see. They shape our programmes, they shape our output, and they shape our channel.
That's what makes us the fearless champion of Britain. It's 9 p.m. I'm Patrick Christie's. Tonight. It looks like there will be a second night of protests in Northern Ireland. We'll be on the ground with our reporter and...
He meet with me urgently to discuss the steps he and his government will take to ensure our values are enforced and that he protects and closes the open, porous border between our country and the Irish Republic.
I'm going to reveal the precise loophole the Sudanese suspect used to get into the UK. Plus...
You've been asked whether or not you condemn the violence that we saw in Northern Ireland overnight, perhaps in part because of comments Nigel Farage made last week in relation to the Henry Noble.
Absolutely ridiculous.
Nobody is buying the left-wing victim mentality anymore, are they? And now, tonight, just a couple of hours ago, the government is going to censor you in what they say are times of crisis. Well, who gets to define that crisis? Who gets to define what fake news is? It's Orwellian. In other news...
طقس ربي يبارك ها شو رايك وجمعة وراحات شوف ما شاء الله شوف الأجواء.
I mean, this is just mind-blowing. Staff at immigration detention centres are now being told not to wear England flags or badges in case it intimidates the illegal migrants who have just come to England. And...
At the budget last year, I fixed the foundations.
We've got an unemployment crisis. So what does Rachel Reeves do? She offers £5,000 to employers to hire foreign workers. Madness. On my panel tonight, we have got the director of the Popular Conservatives, Mark Littlewood, Reform Party board member, Gawain Towler, and journalist and broadcaster Nina Mishkov. And find out why this gorilla looks so miserable. I promise you it'll be something that every single man can relate to. Get ready, Britain, here we go. I expose the illegal migrant loophole. Next.
Thank you very much indeed, Patrick. Good evening to you. It is 9:02. Our headlines. The family of the victim of Monday's Belfast knife attack have called for calm as authorities prepare for a second night of disorder. Stephen Ogilvie lost his left eye in Monday's attack. A 30-year-old Hadi Al-Adid from Sudan has been charged with attempted murder. Police say there will be more officers on the streets tonight to prevent a repeat of yesterday's violent disorder, which saw some people being forced from their homes as vehicles and buildings were set alight. There was universal condemnation for last night's unrest at Prime Minister's questions earlier.
We are united in calling for calm and determined to restore order, support the police and all those on the front line, and ensure that justice is done.
No one has a right to burn families out of their homes or to burn public property and attack the police.
7 men involved in violent protests in Southampton last week over the murder of student Henry Novak have now been jailed. They've been given sentences ranging from 2 years to 3 years and 2 months. The judge said the disorder was a hate crime which had left a legacy of heightened anxiety and a policing bill approaching £450,000. Donald Trump has vowed to hit Iran hard after the two sides exchanged fire overnight. The US targeted radar sites and air defence systems. Iran launched strikes against US bases in the region. Tehran's accused the US of damaging the prospects for peace by violating the ceasefire. Mr. Trump says Iran's taking too long to sign a peace deal.
We'll see what happens, but we hit them hard yesterday, and we're going to hit them again hard today, in case you miss it, in case you don't turn on your television set. And we'll see what happens with the deal. We were really close to a deal, but they keep tapping us along. They keep playing us for suckers because, you know what? They dealt with some very stupid precedents. I have to say that. I'm embarrassed to say it.
President Zelensky says Ukraine has carried out a series of strikes against targets deep inside Russia. His forces released this footage of drone strikes against key facilities at the Russian-occupied port of Mariupol. Ukraine says it's also hit a Russian oil refinery in Samara, a Shadow Fleet oil tanker in the Black Sea, and a drone and missile plant in the city of Cheboksar, more than 560 miles from the front line. And England's final pre-World Cup friendly has been delayed after a heavy thunderstorm in Orlando. The downpour left the pitch at the Inter-Co Stadium waterlogged. The kick-off against Costa Rica was supposed to begin at 9 o'clock UK time. That has been delayed by at least an hour. A sign in the ground is reading lightning strikes. Please seek shelter. The tournament itself gets underway on Thursday when the hosts Mexico play South Africa. England's first match against Croatia is on Wednesday, the 17th of June. You're up to date with the headlines. Now it's over to Patrick.
For all the latest from GB News whilst you're on the go, get the GB News app. Scan the QR code now to download or visit gbnews.com/app.
Yes, good evening. Very shortly, we're going to go live to Northern Ireland, where it looks as though there's going to be a second night of protests. Our reporter, Doogie Beattie, is on the ground for us. Apparently, the police have already brought out the water cannons, so we will take that live for you. But before that, yesterday, that thing that never happens seems to have happened again. Now it's emerged that the Sudanese man accused of attempted murder, possession of a blade and making threats to kill reportedly came to the UK through a loophole. Now I want to explain to you exactly what this loophole is. He got a plane from Khartoum to Paris. Now, this is important because to do this without being flagged by European visa registries, authorities believe that he likely used fraudulent documentation, a stolen passport, or a false identity that left no trace on national security databases. He then got on another flight from Paris to Dublin in the Republic of Ireland. But of course, he didn't stay there. Once he got to Dublin, he then got on a bus that took him across the open border between the Republic and into Northern Ireland. And he immediately claimed asylum. Now, here's an interesting detail, though. The suspect, named as Hadi Al-Adid, actually left Sudan around 2 months before the civil war started, reportedly. This is why he was able to get a flight straight from Khartoum to Paris. But despite this, and despite probably entering Europe on a fake or stolen passport and then wandering into the UK using the open border, he claimed asylum in Belfast, apparently on February the 10th, 2023. And it looks like the Home Office, under the Conservative government, fast-tracked his asylum claim. In September 2023, only 7 months after his initial arrival, the UK Home Office officially approved his application and granted him full refugee status. More than that, along with his refugee status, he was issued with a 5-year residency permit, giving him legal leave to remain in the UK until 2028. So, what happened then? Well, as his claim was being heard, he will have likely been put up in dispersal accommodation, like HMOs, hotels. But once he was given